welcome to the special training of Wired for Wealth Financial Abundance Training. Thank you guys for joining me here. I can see people from all over the world here that are joining me, and we're here in the studio here on a Sunday afternoon. And I'm so grateful to be able to be here and connect with you and to be able to share some insights of what we're going to be able to do. We're going to spend the next 3 hours working on your financial consciousness and your financial literacy inside that, and how to rewire your brain to be able to create the lasting success that you're looking for, to create the wealth that you've been searching for probably for a long time. And maybe you're an individual who's been here at other programs and seen other things or bought any of my books, and you've kind of gone through the journey of trying to learn more about yourself, about what you're trying to do and create, and you've kind of been stuck. I don't know, maybe if that's you. Or maybe you're someone who's just like on crushing it in life and you've just done amazing and you've kind of got to this plateau where it's like, oh, here I am, and I don't know where to get to the next level. Maybe that's why you're here. But whatever way you're here, we're going to do this together. That's what I want you to know. We're going to take this journey together from wherever you are in the world. And I want you to know that today, it's not about just minor successes. This is about macro wins. This is about macro wins. And I don't know where you are from the world and what part of the world you're here from, but I want you to know that I can see everyone that's here. So for those of you who are here and have your cameras on, I want to congratulate you and thank you. And I want you to know that this is not a camera-free webinar thing. Like, I can see all of you, right? We've got this whole setup here in the office. Let's go to camera 6, and I want to show everyone that's here, right? Like, I can see everybody here, and I can talk to you, and we're going to have conversation. Let's see, are we on camera 6? There we are. You guys can see each other. I see Casey. I see Walter. I see David. I see Selma. I see Ada. I see Darlene. Good to see you. Shelly, good to see you as well, right? Brian's here, Nick's here, Ashley's here. Thank you guys. Thank you guys all for being here. Amanda, holy cow, I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see your face as well, right? And so what I'm saying to you guys here is that we're going to have this conversation over here. If I go to this side on the board here, I have my chat board here. So when I come to this camera here, I can see where you're from. I see Tony from South Africa's here. Manchester's here. Yeah, you're the only one with no sound. Everyone else has sound. Australia's here. We've got Ireland here. Look at that. We've got 5 countries just chatting. Tell me where you're from. Put in the chat box where you're from so I see where you're from. I want to see where you're from. I've got South Africa here. We've got Ireland. We've got Australia. We've got Canada, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Chicago, baby. Colorado's in the house. Alaska. Excuse me. Vegas, baby. I just came back from Vegas yesterday. Spent 4 days there training and learning. Had a one-day consult. It was absolutely amazing out there. Ontario's, we got 5 countries just represented right off here. Alberta, all the way from Alberta. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for being here, for being a part of today, for being part of today's experience inside this. Now, a couple things I do want to cover as we talk about the importance of today. And one of the things that I'll tell you is that if you're sitting there with your camera off, I'm going to highly suggest to you that you turn your camera on. I'm going to highly suggest you turn your camera on because, look, I've done programs too. I do programs all the time. I'm a student just like you are. And I know the focus that happens when my camera's on and when my camera's off, right? There is no question in there, right? If your camera's on, like, Mark, I can see you. I'm going to talk to you, right? Bellin, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to have these conversations with you. But if your camera's off, you're going to miss some of the important nuances I'm going to share with you today. I promise you, you will. Because today we're going to break into the science of rewiring your brain. We're going to go through things like the nuclear accumbens, and we're going to understand why you don't create more money and why money is like cocaine, believe it or not. I'm going to show you the scientific evidence that proves this so that you can actually realize how the neurology needs to be set for you to win in growing your business, growing your financial life, scaling your business if you're trying to scale your business, or maybe you're just someone who's trying to get off your rear, trying to get back into the game, whatever that is, right? Doesn't matter where you're from. But I do know certain things are going to matter tremendously. So I want to share with you kind of the expectations of today right off the top so you know kind of what we're going to deal with, right? Number 1, I know there's a raffle, right? Let's congratulate everyone today for stepping in. And as you know in the raffle, here's how it worked, is that you paid $7. Look, I didn't have a finance program for the $7. If you needed to finance it, you probably shouldn't be on this training in any capacity, right? But we have a $7 ticket, and currently exactly, I don't know how many. Last check I had, I think it was almost 200 people, and the raffle was up to about $1,300. I don't know the exact count. The team is going to get that for me, and they'll share that with me. But it's about $1,300. So one of you today is going to walk away with $1,300 in cash. If you report that to the IRS or don't, that's on you. I have no attachment to it. But some of you, someone's going to walk away with $1,300. Everybody in this is granted, whether you're part of my mastery program or not, because each one of you has paid a ticket to be here. So you're all part of the drawing. I want you guys to all hear that. But, Jess, before you go crazy, okay? But before you go crazy, I want you to know that in order to win, you have to be on live. This is not something where I'm going to email you that you won. I'm not going to do that. You have to be on live. And when am I going to do the raffle? It's kind of up to me. It's kind of up to me. So I will do it. I promise you I won't forget it. It's not going to be at the end. It won't be at the end because that's what you expect from me. That's what you expect in this. But it won't be at the end. But there'll be a time where I do the raffle, and I want you to know that but you got to be live. Okay, you got to be here for that. You are going to have a chance. We're going to do a Q&A section in this as well. Towards the end, we're going to do Q&A. So you can ask me questions on the stuff that we've covered and how we're going to be able to help grow your wealth and your income inside that. So you'll have a chance to ask questions inside it today. We're also going to make this a participation workshop. There's going to be participation. You're going to be asked to participate involved inside this. And the reason I say that is because what I've found over the years in doing programs and presentations and even being part of them, when you participate, Letitia, I'm sure you can attest to this. When you participate is when you have the most growth. When you participate, you have the most growth. When you don't and you think you know it all, that's where the problem starts. Because you sit and say, I don't need to participate. I don't need to take part in it because I know it all. That's the problem. I call that the I know disease, right? It's the I know disease. I already know that. I don't need to be a part of that. That's kind of a mistake. It's kind of a mistake. So I will ask you to participate. Today is not just a lecture. I hope you realize that. I don't like lecturing to people. That's not my interest. If I want to be a lecturer, I'd be a professor for crying out loud, right? But this is a workshop. So you're going to work through things on yourself. I'm going to ask you questions that you're going to put in the chat box. And you're going to write to me, and you're going to talk to me inside this. And I'm going to try and help you as much as I can inside this. And if there's time and an opportunity, you never know. When I ask you to participate or I ask you to share, I may just rewire you just to do it to help you. So you don't know. If you sit on the sidelines, you don't get results. But if you dive in, you can actually change the way you do things. You can actually change your life in a matter of in this 3 hours. So I say that to you because I want you to be involved. I want you to dive into this. And I want you to realize is that the power of today will be what you make out of it. The power of today will be what you make out of it, Linda. It won't be up to me. It won't be up to me. It'll be up to you. We got Ufe here from the Netherlands, right? From all the way from Denmark, who's here, right? I see him here. It'll be up to him what he makes out of today. Patrick's here. Patrick knows lots about money, right? You can have all the financial knowledge you want to, and I love that. You can have all the strategy you want to, but strategy will never trump consciousness. It can't. You can have all the strategy you want to. Here's how I do real estate investments. Here's how I do conversations. I can give you an example. I was having a conversation with someone who's building a $300 million syndicate, and he's going to be selling it for a $3 billion valuation. Now, that's a lot of money, right, for anybody inside that. And he has a percentage, and he has doing this deal inside that. And he said, here's the problem, because I have all these real estate brokers under me. I have all these real estate deals that happen. He goes, but I can't get people to want to move to change the way that they think. I said, that's exactly what I do. And I kid you not, true story. This happened Friday night. And we're sitting there, and he's like, so you could rewire anything. Because I'm a student, right? I'm a student of this stuff. I've dealt with anxiety. I've dealt with depression. I've dealt with all this stuff inside of it. And we're having this conversation. And he says, but he's got these hiccups. We're literally sitting right next to each other. He's got hiccups for 20 minutes. It's like, I can't get rid of the damn hiccups. I said, you want me to help you? No joke. I gave him one tool, 1 second, and the hiccups were gone. He's like, what the hell did you just do? I told him the strategy. He did it right there on the spot, and his hiccups were completely gone instantly. We waited 45 minutes. I said, did the hiccups come back? He's like, no. He said, how on earth did you do that? I said, well, when you rewire the brain, your body and that respond differently. So he sat there with all the intellectual knowledge that he could get. Right, Sarah? He knew the how-tos. Well, what do you do when you have anxiety? Is you're thinking about this. That's not the game. It's not about how you think about the strategy. It's literally about how you integrate the strategy, how your body integrates it. That's why you can have all the strategy you want to. Some of you are very smart individuals. I know you are. But the problem is that if your body and brain aren't in congruence to the strategy, You'll have a consciousness breakdown, and your body won't move forward towards it. And whatever you do, you'll have a resistance around it. So today, I want to make sure that we kind of start the process of breaking down some of this. We start the process of breaking down some of the resistance so that you can actually get yourself moving towards a direction, towards where you want to go. Does that make sense to everybody? If that makes sense, put yes in the chat box with me. Because I want you to get that today. It's not just about, hey, look, I'm going to learn all this stuff, and I'm just going to put this stuff cognitively in my brain. And Alex, you can put all that cognitive stuff in your brain, and you can learn it, and I can give you the strategy, but you won't do anything with it. And your income won't grow, and your wealth won't grow. Because, look, we are in the middle of this crazy economic time, right? We've printed trillions of dollars. We know that the facts are simple, right? The facts are simple of what's going on in the world. I've seen different sources and say that we've had inflation rise to the point of, 9.1. I read somewhere it said 8.1, but as of December, it's still at 8.1% of inflation. That means that every dollar you're holding on to is worth less this year than it was last year. And it continues to. It continues to depreciate in the value of the dollar because we keep printing money. Okay? Now, I know it's like the idea, like I don't know about you, but I heard this as a child as well. What do you think? Money grows on trees? You can just print money? Well, actually, it's kind of what happens, don't we? We kind of do that. That's exactly what we do. We print money. But what if you weren't the one that had to worry about printing money and you could actually make your own money and you can make lots of it? Lots of it. I told you I was having a conversation with a guy who's going to be selling his business for $3 billion. I was with people who had businesses of over 6 figures. 9 figures inside that. And doing deals every single day and just making $100 million a year. Like, that's a lot of money for, I don't know, to me it is. Maybe not to you. Maybe to you it's like, oh, it's a day in the park for me. Maybe it is, and I hope that's great. But for others, you know what? It could be $1 million is a lot of money, and that's great. It could be $10 million is a lot of money. That's great too. Here, I'm not here to give you what your goal should be. I'm not here to do any of that. I'm here to make you realize is that your goal can be whatever you want to. It can be whatever you want to. It could be a level of fulfillment that you can get from your brain and your body. But if you want to make more money, the reality is that you're going to have to do things differently, and you're going to have to think first differently. If you rewire their brain to think differently, you'll have all the aptitude and fortitude you're going to want to get to be able to take your life to another level. That's what we're going to get into today. So, that being the case, let me kind of get into this. Misty says, I'm not looking to get rich. I just want to get really, really, really comfortable with $100 million. Oh, no, that's not what she said. I threw that in there for her. Right? She said, I just want to be comfortable, right? Government manipulation, there's no question. Shelly says it's interesting, right? That kind of money scares me. I can barely keep track of my monthly income. That's such a great statement. I want you guys to realize is that, yeah, if I say that $100 million, that's a scary place for some people. But what if we can just make another $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 a month? An extra $100,000 a year would change the life of everyone on this call. Would that be a fair statement? Absolutely. There's no question about it, right? And I get that. So please, thank you, Shelly, for bringing me back to a little bit of reality in that as well. Because the reality is that maybe you're not looking to make $100 million. Maybe you're just saying, hey, Doc, if I can make another $5,000 a month, my life would be completely different. And that's great. Then let's do that. Then let's go after that. And let's make that our intention. Let's make that our focus for today. Let's make that where we want to go to. Because maybe you want to build that $100 million company. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you look at it and say, I just want to be able to do the things that I need to do to be able to live the life I want to. That's great, right? That's all that matters. So I love that. Thank you, right? This is interesting. Callie says that she has conditional belief that when thinking, I must get a job or work for someone else in order to have financial security. How many people have that same type of belief that you need to work for somebody to have financial security? Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I want you to realize is that there's a lot of trainings, a lot of programs where people will go and say, you know what, I want to get rid of my JOB. That JOB, that's a piece of shit. I don't want to do that. That sucks. I hate that thing. Well, the reality is this, is that the JOB is actually giving you the life that you have today. So first you got to be grateful for the life that you have today before you release the JOB. Gratitude is the first step that comes along the way, but most people get along and say that they want to resent their job, and they'll try and jump into business with this aptitude and this perception that money's just going to show up in business. And you don't have to work hard. It's easy. And you don't have to spend hours and hours slaving away. The truth is that's not true. That's not true at all. As a business owner, you're working more than an employee. The employee goes home 40 hours a week and calls it a day. As a business owner, you're working all the time. It's part of who you are. It's part of your DNA. And that takes some time and transition to build into. And that's okay. I want you to know that if you are saying, I just want to be an employee, hey, love it. Great. But what if you could make more money as an employee? What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that inside that. Nothing wrong with being that. I have a friend of mine. I have many friends who are in the corporate arena, and they're in the corporate arena, and they're super wealthy inside of it because they've structured their life with that security in mind. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want you guys to hear that today. There's nothing wrong with living life the way you want to live it. A lot of programs and seminars and trainings, what they'll do is they'll shun other people and say, well, if you are working for a job, then you don't have freedom of your life. Well, look, that's not true. That's not true at all. Because how much freedom does an entrepreneur have that's not making any money? None. There's no freedom. But someone who's actually getting a paycheck and money's coming in every day, they have some freedom. They know they have the freedom and the peace of mind to know when money's coming in. It's not the money that comes in that matters. It's how you manage that money that makes all the difference in the world. That makes all the difference in the world. You could be making $10,000 a month. You can be making $1,000 a month. You could be making $100,000 a month. It makes no difference. It's how you manage that money that's going to determine your peace of mind. And we're going to go into that today. We're going to go through that in complete psychology. And I'm going to say this statement. The more money you manage, and the better you manage it, the more money you will have to manage. That's part of the game inside this. And what determines how we manage our money? It's all right here. It's right here. It's all right in here. The emotions, the strategies, the past, all of that's in there. That's what we're going to cover heavily today inside that. So let's dive right into what we're going to be covering today. You guys are doing great inside this. Are you guys ready to get started? Put yes in the chat box if you're ready to get started. Okay, here we go. My clicker thing is now on. All right, here we go. Here's what we're going to cover. Can I get the slides up? Fantastic. So what we're going to cover today is the secrets that are keeping you blocked from moving money to a place of abundance. Right? We've all heard this idea before that money comes from a place of abundance. Just be abundant. Just be abundant. And Darlene, how many times have you heard that? I just want to be abundant. I just want to be abundant. But then you look at your life and you ask yourself, what abundance am I really living? It's freaking stress all the time. Right? And you're angry and you're emotional. I'm not saying you are, Darlene. I'm just saying people in general, right? And maybe you are. I don't know. But what's the secret that's keeping you blocked from moving into a place of abundance now? We're going to cover that. We're going to cover why money, please get this, money is the number one cause of people's health conditions. Yes, it's exactly what I said. It's the number one cause of people's health conditions. People are like, Dr. Trivedi, if we come off the slide just for a sec, people say to me all the time, is that you're a doctor. Why do you talk about money? Here's why I talk about money. Because I was in practice many years ago, and I had patients coming in the door, and their bodies were in ailments, and I'd go ask more questions in their life. And I was very good at doing patient histories. And I would ask lots of questions about their life. And I promise you without a doubt, the worse the health of the patient, the greater financial distress they had. And I saw this as an observation again and again and again. The further, the more stress they had of finances, the greater the distress that they lived in, and their health was declining because of it. And I found, and you'll see studies as we talk about this later, that the wealthier the individual, the less health individuals that came in. They came in for maintenance and taking care and living a high-performance life versus people who came in because of ailments. They came in to get rid of sickness. And there was a vast difference in this. And so I say this because and there's now research that shows this, and we'll cover this in detail, is that why money is actually the number one cause of your health issues. Everyone's chasing happiness and money, or happiness and peace of mind, right, Tony? But the truth is this, is that until they don't take care of the financial part of the game, their health is going to be a symptom. I don't care if you're dealing with high blood pressure. I don't care if you're dealing with diabetes. I don't care if you're dealing with ailments. Money is a part of that factor. And I'm going to go through in detail today far more correlative than I've ever done before today. So if you've heard me say that before, great. Today I'm going to break down the neurophysiology of it. I'm going to break down the science of it. So when you look at it, you're going to say, holy shit. I hope today, my goal today is that you realize by the end of these next 3 hours that if you don't take charge of your financial wealth and your wealth in your life, that it is going to cause you major distress and challenge in the future, because it's true. It's 100% true. And you could sit under a rock and think it's not going to happen to you, but the truth is you'll become a statistic. And I don't want you to be a statistic. I don't want you to be a statistic. I want you to take charge of your life inside that. So if we pull the slides back up. I'm also going to cover today why you're not saving money and investing, even though you're making money. Right? Some of you make lots of money. I get it. Some of you are very wealthy. It's great. But why aren't you saving more? Why don't you have more money to show for it? I don't know about you, but I remember early on in my practice years when I didn't understand the game of money, I was a kid. I was 25 years old, 26 years old, making a couple $100,000 a month. Like, that's a lot of money for a 25-year-old kid. To me, at least, right? It was for me, at least. I'd never come from that kind of money. But making $200,000 a month, but then I'd look at myself and I'd look at my business and I had nothing to show for it. Nothing to show for it. And I'd ask myself, like, why am I here? Why am I stuck in this place? And you'd talk to the marketing gurus. Well, you're just not marketing right. You talk to the sales guru. Well, you're not selling enough. And I'm like, I'm the biggest practice that I know of. Like, I see more people than anyone. And you could be like that too, where you're working so hard inside of it. But at the end of the month, you look at it and say, hey, there's nothing here. There's nothing to show for me inside this. Why is that? Do I have nothing to show inside this capacity? Well, there's a reason for it. And it all starts in here. And it ends in here, believe it or not, too. And I'm going to show you the tricks around that and the strategies around that, too. And as I said, why you're making money and have nothing to show for it. That's why exactly happens. And this is important. Why your past is preventing your future and your present from actually living in wealth. Why your past is actually preventing you from living in wealth inside that. Because most people just say, you know what, it's a new time, I'm going to do something different. It's the beginning of the year. It's January, for crying out loud, and we're going to set new goals, and that's going to be it. That's going to be the thing we're going to do. We're going to set a new goal. That's it. Set new goals, create a new life. Look, you guys are on this call. How many people have set goals before? It's the 15th of the month, halfway through. You've set goals before, and you look at it, you say goals, here are my goals, here are my goals. And then you realize by the second month, those goals are obsolete. Many people in this call probably wrote the same goals that you did last year, for that matter. Right? How many times have you written, I just want to be healthier. I just need to lose that extra 10 pounds. The only problem is that this year, that 10 pounds is like now 20 pounds too heavy. And then the year after, that's going to be 30. Most people don't change inside that. Change is an internal process. And here's the fun part, or not so fun part. If you come on slides just for a second. Right? Here's the thing I want you to realize about change. I say you got to change, but I'm going to tell you all right now, I've been doing this a long time, none of you want to change. I will sit and tell you that none of you want to change. It's true, because we think we're comfortable. We think we're good now. You're hoping that I give you the single strategy inside of it and that little bit inside of it, but the thing that's going to do it is not the strategy. It's going to be you changing inside of that. That's why it's like there's a couple hundred people on here. If I said, I'll give you the financial secret and you don't have to do anything and I'll make it easy and you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is show up and you're going to have $1 million in your bank account tomorrow. This thing, all of you would have told all your friends. It would have been the lottery. But that's not what happens. That's not what needs to happen. So I want to preface this conversation by saying we're going to have a tough conversation. Some of you are going to have a tough conversation today. And I know it doesn't sound like good marketing. It doesn't sound like, hey, this is not going to keep people on. You're even Australia. Michelle's like, that doesn't sound like I want to stay on for the fun ride. But I'd rather tell you the truth right off the top, because this conversation we're going to have today is for people who really want to make a change. It really is. It's for people who really want to make a change. It's not for people who are just looking for an easy way to do it. And I know that it's going to be like, oh, well, hey, you know, I want it to be easy. We all do, for crying out loud, right? I sat there in Vegas and watching the ding, 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 everyone like going off crazy, right? Everyone's wanting more money. Everyone's wanting to win that grand prize. And one lady won a jackpot. She's like, I've been working so hard for this. I said, really? Really? You've been working so hard? You've been pressing a button the whole time. That's not working. But that's what people will think. I've been working. And how much have you spent into it? How much have you done for it? Because here's the thing, is that it's not going to happen unless you change. So I want to go to the chat box really quickly. And I want you to just put in there, are you ready to make a change on the inside out? To change yourself inside that. I really want to have a real conversation with people today. How many people are not? Put no too. That's okay. Okay, we're ready. I see a heck yes. I see I'm willing. It's 4 a.m. Yes, I love that. It's true, Michelle. It is 4 a.m. for you. Okay. We're here to make a change. I love it, right? So I want to, I'm very honest with what I do. I'm the cut the bullshit doctor. That's who I am. I tell people the truth. Whether you like it or not is really not up to me. So I want to have this tough conversation with you today to make you look in the mirror and say, shit, this is what I've been doing. But here's what I'm going to do. But here's the thing. We're going to find out what you've done wrong, but I'm also going to give you the formula and the secrets to get out of it. I'm going to give you the path to get out of it so that you can make different decisions. You can make different transitions for yourself so you're not stuck. That's what the key is going to be inside this, right? So let me ask you right this. I want you to write this down on your, I'm going to put 30 seconds. Let's take a minute right now. And I want you to ask yourself, what are you hoping to gain from today's training? Why did you show up today? Right? Let's take 60 seconds and put on the clock. Maybe put some light music in the background. And let's take 60 seconds and write, what are you hoping to gain today? Go. All right, guys, welcome back. Great job. I see some of you wrote them down here. I'd love to hear from some people, kind of what you're hoping to gain today. Maybe if you tell me, I can help customize it inside that as well. So all you got to do to let me know is raise the Zoom hand inside there. It's ethnically colored if you want it to be. I guess they were politically correct in that. But just raise your Zoom hand and kind of share with me, maybe in a quick sentence, just tell me who you are, where you're from, and what you're hoping to gain. A couple of things inside that. Let's take no more than 10 to 15 seconds. And let's see if we can get 6, 7 people on the board who are willing to share what they're hoping to gain today.
Hey, Dr. T. First up, we have is David. For David, everybody.
Hey, David.
Hey, Dr. T.
How are you, my man?
Good. Houston, Texas, is where I'm from. What I'm hoping to gain is forgive myself for the financial fuck-ups I've made over the last few years or so. And be able to put myself in the present to create from that place.
I love that. That's great. Let's give it up for David, right? This is how we do a round of applause here, right? Great job, David. I hope you get some clarity on that. That's great. Who do we have next?
Great job. Next up, Dr. T, we have Kelly Fisher. You're for Kelly, everybody.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Dr. T. One things that I'm hoping to get out of this is to have the keyword stop from affecting me in everything I do. I come to a screeching halt and am unable to push forward in anything I do, and a lot of time gets wasted.
Okay, fair enough. So you want to be able to break through kind of what you've been stuck at, basically.
Yeah.
Great. And where are you from, Kelly? I lost you there.
Sorry, I'm from Denver, Colorado.
Cool. Well, thanks for being here, Kelly. Appreciate it. Let's give it up for Kelly.
Great job, Kelly. Next up, Dr. T, we have Toby M. You have for Toby, everybody.
Toby. Hey, Toby.
Hi there. Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Cool. And what are you hoping to gain today?
My wife asked me to participate and set aside some kind of biases and, preconceived stuff. And I'm just looking to see if there's new information or a perspective that'll help me kind of break out of maybe solidified sort of habits or perspectives to do something new.
I love that. And Toby, I love what you just said. I was thinking about this morning. How often in life, right? And I'm only talking to Toby here. No one else, and no one else should pay attention as I'm saying this, because this is just for Toby. Just for Toby. Okay? How often do we say no without learning what things even are?
A lot.
A lot, don't we? We say no without even learning what things are, and we because of our preconceived biases and notions. We think that, oh, like if I'm going to do this thing, it's bad. Or being in business is I don't want to get in business because it's bad or anything. We stop listening without even understanding what the potential opportunity or what the situation could be. But here's the thing I've found, and all of you are in that classification for sure. Those that say yes create more opportunities in their life by far, right? They create more opportunities in their life. There's a time to say no, which we'll cover, but listening to opportunities is one of the things, the keys of wealthy people. As I said, I was in this group, and everyone's just talking business idea, and they're not saying no to anything. Like, they don't say no. They say, yeah, let me listen to it. As an investor, right? And I want you to think about this, that today you're all investors in your life. Maybe you're not investing in massive real estate deals or syndicates or any of these things, but maybe you're an investor in your life. And here's the thing, is that listening just to see what's out there, then you can make your own opinions and judgments. You're all smart people. You can do that for yourself, but listening becomes the key factor that allows you to create the opportunity for yourself. So, Toby, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being here, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Toby.
Great job, Toby.
Next up after T, we have Miss Wendy C. Give it for Wendy, everybody.
Hey,
Hey, Wendy.
finally. Happy New Year. Uh-oh.
A lot of feedback from you, Wendy.
Can you hear me now?
Now we got you. Very good. Tell me where you're from.
Lancaster, California.
Lancaster, California. Fantastic. And what are you hoping to gain today?
I am trying to get past my past that's
Okay.
filled with trauma.
Okay, well, let's go through that. Right? Let's go
I
through it
recognize
and
it's a
clear some of
block.
that. So awesome, Wendy. Great job. Let's get it for Wendy.
Thank
Maybe
you.
two more, and then we'll get two more, and then we'll move on.
Awesome. Next up after T, we have Tony. Give it up for Tony B, everybody.
Tony!
Can you hear me now?
I can perfectly.
All
Tony,
right,
how are
great. I wrote it down here, the ability to make 50K net per month in phase one, finding the best way to do that.
I love that. I hope I can help unlock the secrets that will
I know
get
you can.
I hope I
I'm
can. I
confident in
appreciate
you.
it. Where are you from?
Maine.
Maine. Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us, Tony.
Thank you.
Great job. Let's give it up for Tony. Let's give one more.
Awesome. Let's give it up for Ashley S, everybody.
Hey, Ashley. Wait for you to unmute here. Let's try it now. Say something now, Ashley. No, I can't.
Hey, Ashley, we'll come back maybe on the next round. I don't think your mic was set up right. No worries. Let's head over to Eric. Give it up for Eric, everybody.
Hey, Eric.
Is there more than one Eric on this call?
You're the guy. You're the man.
Well, I know nobody said anything to the employee meeting, so I'll personally tell you you're doing a good job, Dr. T.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm looking to overcome a block that I have from my past, obviously in childhood, and hopefully we'll delve into that today.
Great. I love that. We'll try and dive some of that into today as well. So let's get it for everybody who decided to participate and be a part of this. Thank you guys all for being here. So let's dive into this, right? Let's dive into this. Let's put the slides back up and dive into this a little bit deeper. Here's the problem that what I've seen over the years, right, is that most people, when they look at their business, in their life, whether it be a business, whether it be scaling, whether it be growing. Here's the thing, I classify it all the same because I want you to understand, right? Growing doesn't mean you just have to be in business like some people said. Growing could just be you're growing your financial life. That's why you're here. That's a part of that whole journey. So just growing. Scaling is for people who are like, maybe they've got a successful business. Maybe they're making, $100,000 a month or $50,000 a month or whatever it is they want to. And their business is at a point of scale where they can expand it. Or maybe they're trying to buy a business or grow a business in that capacity. All of these things are where everybody sits. If I classify it, right? Like Tiffany saying, I'm just looking to grow. I love it. No problem. Right? And maybe you're trying to grow your business, maybe not to a point of scale, but growing wherever you are. The problems that we have, these are the characteristics that I found in individuals psychologically inside this. Number one is that people are over-optimistic. People are over-optimistic inside this. It's really interesting. I was doing some thinking this morning on my walk, and I was thinking about, I was in Vegas, as I said, over the last 4 days, and I was thinking about Vegas and what makes Vegas run, and we all know it's this neurotransmitter called dopamine, right? Dopamine. Dopamine becomes a factor inside of it. Let's go to the board, actually. I want to talk about this. If I look at this and I go to dopamine inside of it. Good? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter in your body. And what it does, it sends signals inside of your system. So, neurotransmitter of dopamine makes you expect something to happen. It sets us up as an expectation inside this. So we go on this path of looking forward to things. So I want you to realize something. When I'm going to start off real hot and heavy with this, this dopamine, that expectation of looking forward to a reward, this mechanism is exactly the thing that causes more people illness, chaos, and destruction in their life. It's this expectation factor that stops people from. Think about it, right? Let's get off the screen here. If we think about it on who goes to the casinos, can you believe I spent 4 days in Las Vegas, and I didn't touch a single gambling thing at all? I didn't play a single hand of blackjack. I didn't go to the slot machine. I didn't do any of that. And here's the interesting thing. I didn't even want to. I had no urge to sit and say, oh, let me just go play for a little bit. Let me go do something. None. Zero. Because here's the thing I want you to gather. When we're over-optimistic, that's what makes us sit down at a craps table or sit down at a blackjack table. It's because we're looking forward to a greater reward. We're looking forward to a greater reward. And every time we hit a success, we're looking for another reward. So I want you to keep that in mind because I'm going to build a lot of premise around that in this conversation, right? It is unreal, Casey. I agree. Like, if that wasn't me before, I'd sit down, I'd play. There's no question. If we look at number 2 on this list, people take too many opportunities. If we understand it. People take too many opportunities on this. Let's pull up the slides, please. People take too many opportunities. Number 3 is people are afraid what happens with growth. Just like Shelley said earlier, right? I'm afraid of having that much money because what am I going to do to manage it? How many people think about this? If you really put this in the chat box, if this is true, like you're starting your life and you want to make money, but you're afraid if you actually do, what will happen? Maybe you'll have people show up. Maybe you're worried about creating more money and you're not going to know how to invest it. You're going to be afraid of losing it. Maybe your family and friends are going to start asking you for money. Maybe you realize if you actually make lots of money, what's going to happen is that you're going to be, someone's going to come along and take it away. The IRS is going to come along and take it away. How many people love the IRS? None of you? Come on. I love the IRS. I'll tell you why. Those of you who are doing this, Rachel, I'll tell you why you need to learn to love the IRS. Because whether you want to or not, you can minimize your IRS payment. But Uncle Sam is coming. Uncle Sam is coming regardless. And you know why I love it? I'll tell you why I love it. Let's come off the screen just for a sec. Why I love the IRS. It's very simple. We have roads, we have lights, we have schools, we have education, we have a life in America or in a first world nation because of taxes, because of the people in it. Now, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of like who's paying how much, all that. That's not what I'm saying here, okay? But I do love the fact that, you know what? If I want to go outside and I want to drive on a road in a car, it's not a dirt road. I do love that. It's not a dirt road. Or if there's, I have traffic lights that will keep congestion minimized. There doesn't have to be accidents. If you ever get a chance in your lifetime, I would recommend highly that you go to a third world nation. Spend some time there. And you know what? You're going to get a greater value of the IRS. Because here's the thing. If you don't manage the IRS, they're going to become a major pain in your ass. And they will stop you, I promise you, from making money in your life. And I don't speak this from an ivory tower. There was a point in my life where I had no money. I had no income, no money in my life, and I had an IRS issue. And it wasn't fun. It was after my divorce. I had nothing. And I couldn't pay the IRS. And you know what they did? They did this, I swear. They can do this. They can go into your bank account and take your money. Have you ever had that happen? Yeah, it happens. It happens. So I don't tell you what I tell you from an ivory tower. I tell you because I rewired my brain inside of it. And today, I'm grateful for the bill I get to pay to the IRS. The more money I get to make the IRS, the more money I made for myself. And I'm okay with that. I want to minimize it. I don't need to. It's a bill, right? But when I write that check, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. And I suggest that to you right now because if you don't, it's not something you're going to run from ever in your life. Ever. You will never run away from the IRS. As they say, death and taxes, right? That's really what it comes down to. So you might as well start with that process and that. Let's bring the slides back up. Business owners over-index their risk. They think they're too optimistic and they over-index risk. It's like a casino. Go all in. What do you have? A 2 and a 7. You probably shouldn't go all in. But let's go all in. What the hell? What do we got to lose? Right? What I mean by over-index, Jess, is that they risk too much. They think they're optimistic, and they're going to put everything inside of it. Number 5, and this is so important. This is so important for anyone in business or trying to make money and grow. They're irrational decision-making. Completely irrational decision-making. Is that you don't think through the process inside of it, but you become irrational around it. And the 6th is kind of a play off of that, is that mismanagement of emotions. Right? If we come off the slides, why I say mismanagement of emotions is important because our emotions from our past will determine kind of what happens in our life. And they become the tangible factor that prevents our future. If our past mismanagements, if our past mismanagements are there, then what happens is we get caught in the chaos of the past. And if we don't, then it loses that, right? So let's get the slides back up. So who am I? Just real quickly. I've spent years of my life training and studying this system. And how I got into this is important. So let me just kind of share this with you real quick. I started in practice. I started working with patients. And here's the thing I noticed over the years. Over the years, I found that a patient would come into me and they'd complain and their back would start hurting on the 3rd of the month. And I'd say to myself, why is this patient being on the 3rd of the month coming in all the time on the 3rd of the month? I don't understand. So I asked him a question. And why, when did this start? And he said really simply, he goes, it started last night. I said, why does it happen on the 3rd of the month? What's happening on the 3rd of the month every month? And he says, well, I get into an argument with the wife, with the old lady. And I said, what's the argument about? The mortgage. We got to due by the 5th. It's due on the 1st. We're always late. And I got to figure out how I'm going to make the 5th the payment. I don't know how to do it. I'm stuck. And I'm lost. So it's like, we just argue about it. I said, is that when the back pain started? And he says, yeah, that's when it starts. I said, interesting. So I'd already been studying this stuff in a lot of detail and studying the rewiring process. And I said, okay. I started asking some questions because I had a speculation that if I could help people with this, it'd start getting better. So I literally spent 5 minutes and asking him questions. And his back pain went down by almost 65, 70%. I said, I'm not going to touch you today. I'm not going to touch your body. I'm not going to touch your spine. I'm not going to touch anything. I'm just going to send you home, and then you come back the next day. And he said, Doc, like I'm paying for a visit. I said, I won't even charge you for today's visit. He says, okay, fine. I said, but if I get you better, you're going to pay double on tomorrow's visit. I said, okay, that's fair, right? It's fair enough, I think, right? So we're both invested in the game. I got to keep him in fair exchange inside that. He says, okay, I'm in. So he comes into the next day and he says, Doc, I'm 80% better. I said, how is that? He said, I don't know. So I finished it up, tweaked it out, and I asked a couple more questions, and it was gone. And his back pain was gone. And I said, holy crap, what am I onto here? And I realized in a far grander manner that the mind-body connection was far bigger than what we gave it credit for. Because we separate our health and we put it in a box, right? We should say, this is my health, and this is my finance, and this is my business. And we separate this. And here's what I realized at that point in time. I started to realize that it's actually all interconnected. It's all interconnected. And we could have stuff going on with our health. And what's going on with our health is preventing us from having actual finance. And if we have finance stuff, we have it preventing us to going into our body and our brain and preventing our life from functioning. So what happens is this, is that if an individual is stuck and they're not functioning right, we're going to say there's a health problem. But really the problem came from their finance. Or if someone's problem has with their health, it could be coming from their finance, or their relationship, or their business, or their spirituality. All of it plays a massive factor in what we think. And here's what I'll say: this is that 97%, if not 99%, of the chronic health conditions we deal with today, in my opinion, are psychologically driven. They're psychologically driven. That means that what's going on with our body and longevity, if we're not addressing health with it and our lifestyle with it, what we're doing is we're creating an illness of life. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So I like to sit and say this, is that can you see as a doctor, if I'm really trying to help people and heal and help them live their life better, if I only gave you an adjustment or if I only gave you a pill and a potion, what am I doing? I'm covering a symptom. I'm only covering a symptom. But if I get to the cause and I address the financial issue, I'm actually helping your health heal. So as a doctor, it's almost my responsibility to get to the root cause. And if the root cause is financial, that's causing your health issue, then you know what? We've got to handle the finance problem. So I believe I'm actually doctoring far grander today at a much bigger level than I ever did when I was in practice. Does that make sense? Put yes in the chat box if that makes sense, right? Yeah, multi-layers of healing. Exactly. So I want you to realize that today that we're talking about money, but we're talking about your health. We are 100% talking about your health and your longevity in your life. There's no question about it, right? Because you can't separate wealth and health. They are intertwined and interconnected. So let's get the slides back up. So just a little bit of who I am. I've spent years in practicing over 500,000 people over the course of my career in my lifetime. So what I do is a science. It's not an arbitrary thing. It's a simple thing. I've seen thousands. I see 1,250 patient visits a week. And Andy, you can probably attest to this, Andrew, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people in a practice. And I knew it's because people came from all over the world to really my reputation. People just start referring people from China, from India, from Greece, from Germany. People would just come and they tell their families to come, that you got to come see this doctor. And I don't say this out of ego. I say this out of humility, that I was grateful that in this little town in Illinois, I was able to help so many people. Right? I went on to be the president of Mental Toughness University and helped Fortune 500 companies like Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Toyota. I'm the author of the book, Chasing Success. We were on KTLA, CBS, NBC, Fox News. I was named to the Inc. 5000 in business in 2021, the 642nd fastest growing company at the time. I've been on Amazon Prime, Amazon, the Netflix, no, not Netflix yet, but Amazon Prime. And we're working on a Netflix thing. That's why I kind of slipped out of my mouth. So there it is. Inside that, I've worked with athletes, celebrities of all walks of life. Inside of it, Kenny Lofton, John Burke, Emmett Smith, Damon John. Damon John and I are doing some work later on. Last November, I was actually honored and featured on the New York Times and at a billboard in New York Times Square. That was a pretty cool moment. Thank you. Yeah, Linda, I appreciate that. That was a cool moment. And my parents actually were able to drive down. And we didn't put a picture of it, but maybe we should have a picture of my parents and that they got to see, the whole Chasing Success book and that featured inside there. And I think we're very close to actually finally becoming an Amazon bestseller with that as well. So my point in saying all this is not to say, whoa, look at me. It's to sit and say I'm not a newbie to this game of helping people here and rewiring people's brain. I've been doing this a long time, and I know exactly how we're going to do this. At the end of the day, I like to call myself a health and human behavior mental performance expert. That's what I do. I'm a health and human behavior mental performance expert, and I help entrepreneurs like yourself grow their business and scale. That's what I help people do. I don't have the path and the process of what to do and what equities to buy. That's not what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to help you grow this from a mental performance standpoint. That's why we're here. So if I ask you this question, to really dive into this, how were you taught about money and wealth? Right? How were you taught about money and wealth? Thank you, Misty and Wendy. Appreciate that. Thank you for all your kind words. I appreciate it. How were you taught about money and wealth? And I want you to think about this. And what we're going to do is actually, we're going to go into a breakout room. We're going to go into a breakout room. And I want you to write down, take 10 seconds and write it down. Actually, let's put 30 seconds on the board and write it down. Just write it down in how were you taught about money? And then we'll go into a breakout room after that. How were you taught about money and wealth? Let's put 30 seconds on the board. I'll see you then. Go. Great job. Thank you. I see some of you have written down some stuff inside here. Never taught, don't know. I get it. I completely get that, right? So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go into a breakout room. And these breakout rooms are super valuable and super important, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a breakout room. And in there, the person with the longest hair, you're the timekeeper, okay? The person with the shortest hair, you're the leader. You're taking charge. You're sitting saying, we're going to take charge and I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Actually, let's do it. A minute. You're going to give it a minute to talk about how you learned about money. Okay? 1 minute to talk about how you learned about money specifically inside that. And then we're going to go around the room. There'll be 4 or 5 people in the room. For those of you who are sitting on the sidelines with your cameras off, I'm going to highly, highly, highly suggest you turn your cameras on because it's not for you. It's about the other people in the room because they get to participate and hear it as well. So I'll see you in approximately 5, 6, 7 minutes. And shortest hair, you're in charge. Longest hair, you're the timekeeper. 1 minute a person. I'll see you guys in 6 minutes. Go.
Everywhere you go, light follows. Everywhere you go, light follows. Light follows.
My mic on, does that work better? That works. I can't even blame the tech team for that. That's all me. That's all me. I can't blame anyone other than myself on that. Okay, so I know that was probably interesting to see how many people felt like, just raise your Zoom hand or just raise your hand or put in the chat box. How many people felt like you were kind of correlated and the people that you were talking to had a similar challenge and kind of where they learned money was similar, right? Right? Yeah, TJ, it's good to see you here, my man. Good to finally meet you and connect with you. I see you here as well, right? Absolutely. Here's the other interesting thing I want you to kind of gather from this. How many people felt as though when you were working and they were telling their story, you kind of felt like, shit, that's me. Shit, that's me. Like every time they opened their mouth, it was like, oh, that's me. And it was kind of like, oh, well, interesting how that worked out. So I know right now, I just want to take a second and kind of just honor you all for just stepping up, diving into that and going into it. But, you know, it's really interesting. It's really interesting because we've all learned money from somewhere. That's just the truth of it. We've all learned money from somewhere. At some capacity, we've learned money from some entity. And in a second, I'm going to ask you where you kind of heard them from and what you've heard money from and who was it. But what I can tell you is this, is that our past, can we go to the board? Is that possible at all or no? Yeah, if I can go to the board. I kind of want to lay out a little bit of a framework inside here. Okay. Can we do shares? Yeah. Oh, we do? Let's go to shares. I want to hear from some of you. I want you to raise your Zoom hand here, and I want you to tell me kind of where did you learn money from? Susie Orman, I love that. Next thing you're going to tell me is, you know, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Dave Ramsey. It's great. I love it. Okay, who do we have first?
Let's go to Christina.
Let's go to Christina. Hey, Christina, how are you?
Hey, good. Good morning. I learned from my parents was probably my first.
Wait. We breathe. Tell everyone your name, tell everyone where you're from, and then tell what you learned.
Okay. My name is Christina. I'm from Albuquerque. And anything else?
Now tell us who you learned money from.
Okay. Thank you. My parents were my first teachers on how to on how to handle money. So
great. And how do you think that affected you? Learning from your
I
parents?
think that because my parents paid for cash for everything, they did the envelope system, and there was always one for savings, that debt was really scary. And then it was always about savings, but never about investing or growing. So I think that even though, my school was the next one, and then my profession, taught me other things on that, but still I find myself kind of seizing up when I talk about incurring more debt, or around, I'm real hesitant in investing, even though I do it for others. But to do it with my own money, I get really locked up.
It's very interesting. What do you do for a living today?
I'm a CFO for a large, heavy highway construction company.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Right? Like
Yeah.
I think that like your fear of investing for yourself, and you're running probably millions of dollars inside of that. We were just having a conversation with someone on my team, and we're talking about financial advisors. And I can't say this as a stat, but I've worked with a lot of financial advisors over the years, and they don't have money.
Yeah, we're very conservative.
Yeah, well, it's not even that they're conservative. They can't manage the game of money. So that's a great realization, Christina. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Let's give it up for Christina. Let's get a few more on the board.
Thanks, Christina. Let's head over to Nick.
Nick, it's you.
Hello,
How
Can
you
you hear
doing,
me?
Nick? Tell me where you're from. What?
I'm
And,
doing fantastic. I'm from Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada.
Let's go. I actually know where that is. So
Beauty.
I was born and raised in Toronto, my friend.
Oh, nice. So, me, myself, and the members of my room, we're all pretty middle class to lower, and pretty much learned it from our parents.
Mm-hmm.
It was the typical, like the working attitude: get a job, save your money, try not to spend it, put it in the bank, and that was the extent of your savings. Was do what the bank tells you.
Yeah, it's interesting. How many people learn from that mentality, right? Keep your money in the bank, put it in the bank, and keep it in the bank. It's really interesting how that marketing message was really sent to many people, especially during the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And did you know, interestingly enough, that something informational for you is that banks can lend out $9 to every dollar that they have in their bank? So I just want you to understand what that means. That means if the bank has let's say $100 in the bank, legally, they can loan out in mortgages up to $900 inside of that. And you're asking, how is that even possible? How is that legal? That's how the banking regulation sits. And so they're literally making money off of your money. And the more money that they have in assets, the more leverage they have to mortgage out and lend out 9 times as much. And that's why the FDIC was created. That's why you had other factors. They're there to protect people and their money. But the reality is that they're giving people air, for lack of better words, inside that. So it's a really interesting philosophy that we've been taught. And that marketing message was done beautifully around from the banking industry. So, but you're right. A lot of people are taught that. So thank you for sharing that, my friend. Let's give it up for Nick, guys.
Great. Next up we have is Jess. Give it up for Jess, everybody.
Jess, the famous Jess.
Hi, Dr. T.
How
Jess
are you?
here. I'm hanging in.
All right.
Here from California. Learned my money stuff from my parents, like passed down like everybody. Work hard, earn money. But I also at a young age learned how myself to save money on trips. So if I came back with money, my mom would give me half of it. So I learned how to earn money. But then my money block came, my brother stole my money. So
okay.
And so I know that's one of those I have to go through. Is definitely a core seed. I was 7 years old when he was stealing my money. So as I was saving hundreds of dollars. So,
got it. That's a big deal.
But yeah, and then growing up, since my mom just spent all her money and didn't have extra when things came around and stressed, I learned how to balance it and reached out looking for books growing up, like Think and Grow Rich, Susie Orman, but still keep working on my money blocks that are in me and my life experiences. So.
I love it. I love it. And Think and Grow Rich is such a great book. It's such a fantastic book. But how many people have read Think and Grow Rich before? Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book. I'm not going to take anything away from it. However, I want you to know the guy who wrote that book, Napoleon Hill. I couldn't think of his name. Napoleon Hill died broke. I just want you guys to know that. He had no money. Just to put it in context with you, Napoleon Hill died broke. Go do the research. Right, Tally, go do the research on this. It's actually his wife who left him that asset, and she's the one who actually marketed that book and turned it into something. And today, like in the personal development industry, right, Bob Proctor, who was a mentor of mine for many years, like that was his Bible in essence, right? Like that was the thing. Everything was Think and Grow Rich, and there's a lot of people out there who are still taunting the tutelage of Think and Grow Rich, and it's great. But I will sit and say that book was written 100+ years ago inside that. And today we know more about science and neurology than ever before. And as an organization, as a species, and we really Think and Grow Rich is actually not really a factual book. Statistically, neurologically, it's not a factual book inside of it. Because if it was going to work, let's just be real. Let's just be honest. Wouldn't everyone be rich? You could read that book. People say, I read that book all the time. I do work with Damon John. He says, I love Think and Grow Rich. I said, that's cool. That's great. But then why isn't everyone rich? Because millions of people across the world have read it. And a lot, like I work with network marketing teams all the time. And network marketing teams, our Bible is Think and Grow Rich. We read from that every week. Okay, good. So what you're telling me is that you'd rather stay in the 1800s based on information than rather than catch up in 2023. That's what you're telling me in essence inside of it. Because that's the truth inside of it. So something to consider. Not saying don't read the book. Read the book. Not saying not to, but understand we've grown a lot since then. We've grown a lot since then. My son right now, he's reading Shakespeare for school. And I'm going to say something. He's like, I don't understand Shakespeare. I don't know about you, but I didn't understand Shakespeare growing up either. Because would you agree that the way that Shakespeare is written is different in the language than it is today? We don't understand the same vernacular, same tone, same tonality, right? The message is great. But are we going to have the same depth of understanding of Shakespeare today that we did if we read it in the 1800s? Of course not. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. So I think it's antiquated for schools to do that. And I think it's antiquated if we're to not keep our knowledge base up to date inside that, right? That's like reading a health book from the 1500s and something that Hippocrates wrote. Great. But do we know more about health today than we did from the 1400s? Of course we do. We've got to evolve our knowledge base. That's why we're here today. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Jess. So let's give it up for Jess. Let me get one or two more.
Great. Next up we have is Luda. Get up for Luda, everybody.
Luda, is that right?
Yes. I grew up in Soviet Union, Ukraine now.
Okay. Well, before you jump there, where do you live now?
I live in California, San Francisco Bay Area.
Fantastic. And who taught you about money, Luda?
It never was like a conversation at home. It's like everyone used to, in my mind, so the way I grew up, in my mind, having a lot of money is not being a good person. Because that means you have to share. That's communist thing is still, it's still in me.
Yeah.
I don't, whatever I have, I don't manage very well. It's like I remember when I was back in Soviet Union and I brought home my earnings and I put it somewhere and I didn't hide it. I didn't think about it. It was just by TV. So my daughter took it and she was like 2-3 years old. She took it to the day school and she gave it to everybody.
Wow.
Luckily. So I
She's
just realized it today that I'm doing the same thing. I don't spend on myself almost. I'm very stingy when it comes to myself. But whatever I have, it's kind of what's going on there. I'm not managing it. It's just like, oh, sometime I go to it right. Oh, I lost half of it. Yeah. So it's a big mess.
I'm going to give you something that I hope you get to write down. And it's this, is that, and I'll talk about it a little bit later as well, but your self-worth will dictate your net worth. If you have guilt towards yourself, you won't hold on to money. You'll give it away. If you have resentment, you'll resist money from coming in. So what we've got to see with you, Luda, is that I can see in your conversation and what you're saying, there's a lot of judgment. We're going to talk about emotions in a second, about yourself and what money means and how it's holding you back inside that. So I thank you for sharing that in such great detail. I appreciate that so much. Let's give it up for Luda. We'll get one last person.
Awesome. Let's give it up for Devon, everybody. Devon, let's go.
Hey, Devon. You're muted. Let's get you unmuted. You're still muted, Devon. I don't think your mic is set up correctly. You may have to come back.
I'll ask you to unmute, and you can just hit the unmute button.
They're asking you to unmute. Just hit the unmute button. Okay, well, let's go. We'll have to catch him on the next round. Let's get one more. Who do we have here?
Okay, let's give it up for Linda M, everybody.
Let's give it to Linda. Hey, Linda.
Hello.
So tell me where you're from and where did you learn about money?
I am from Norfolk, Virginia, in the U.S.
Cool, cool. And where did you learn about money? Who taught you about money?
It was primarily from my mom and dad, but well, it was from my mom and dad, but primarily from my father. My father was a very stingy man.
Yeah.
He grew up stingy. My grandfather always told me that. It was very close-minded the way I was taught. You gotta get a job. You gotta work hard for money. You gotta work hard for money. That kind of thing. And that kind of stuck with me. It's taken me years to get rid of that mindset, and I'm here because I want to make sure that residue is off me, so I can start making real goals and being realistic with myself. I just turned 45 in November, so I'm ready for a new leaf, most definitely. I have a cleaning business that I want to kind of mindset right now. I don't need it, you know? So, yeah.
You said you have a cleaning business that you want to grow or you want to get rid of? I didn't catch that.
I want to grow it.
You want to grow it? Okay, fantastic. Well, you're in the right place because we're going to talk about growth here right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, fantastic. Great job, everyone. Great job. Let's give it up for Linda. Great work. Great work, everybody. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for participating. Thank you for diving in. Thank you for answering those questions. I want to go to the board now, and I want to talk to you about a framework inside this. And I want to talk about this. If this is our past and this is our future, and what happens is this: if we have some sort of resentment in our past, or some sort of high level of major success in our past, we're going to create the future based on these assumptions. We're going to create the future, and we'll create what's called fantasies or nightmares in the future. So let me give you an example, right? Let's say, hypothetically, that in the past, as Linda said just a little while ago, that she grew up with her father who was very stingy. He was a very stingy man, and he didn't like to share. He didn't like to share anything inside that. And she had resentment towards that around in her father. What she's going to do in the future is she's going to want to hit millions or billions inside of it, as a compensation for this emotion of pain in the past. You'll search for pleasure in the future. Okay? Now, I know I'm getting a little bit detailed here, but stay with me. If in the past someone has levels of success and they think they did something amazing in the past, in the future they'll be afraid of losing it. And this will cause pain, and this will be pleasure inside that. So, for example, you ever talk to someone in business? If you come off the board here. Yeah, if you ever talk to someone in business and you ask them the question, okay? When you started your business, Patrick, I don't know about you, but when you started your business, were you afraid of losing anything? Probably not. Most people, when they start a business and they've got nothing to lose, they can only go up. Remember that? But if you're a business owner, you remember when you started, there was nothing else you could lose. You could only go up. And so you're like, great, I got nothing to lose. I'll go all out. But here's what happens. As time progresses and you start building an income and you start building some wealth, you start becoming afraid of what you've built. It becomes a scary place. And so you say, well, you know what? I've created some money. Okay, now I'm afraid of losing it. And that now becomes its own fear you have to break through. Or in the past, if you said, like, I've had a challenge, maybe you felt like you were robbed or someone stole from you. Like our friend Luda just said that, you know what, her daughter, in some way, believe it or not, her daughter stole her money. Would you agree with that statement, right? Took her money that was there, gave it away. At some level, it was stealing. Of course, it wasn't like something major in that capacity, like with a business deal or something, but someone stole from her. That will continue to hold on to that, right? Or losing benefits inside of that completely. It's exactly right. See, the reason I say that to you is because here's the thing, is that we learn money from basically a few different areas. If you pull up the slides, I want to show you kind of where it is. Everyone said the top one pretty consistently. Slides? Okay. We learn it from our family. We learn it from our parents. We learn it from our business leaders. We learn it from religion, right? We learn from our friends. We learn from our teachers. And we learn from social media. Like if we think about it today, in today's world, how many people are learning money from social media? A lot, right? Religion is a monster one that nobody wants to talk about. It's a monster one. It's a monster one that people don't want to discuss. And the problem is that if we look at it, the family that's going to teach you about business and money is the same people that are stuck inside of it. So if their parents were stuck, you're stuck. Now there's DNA in that go after that, but it keeps you stuck. Parents, anyone in your family could be in that. Religion, we're talking about here a little bit. Friends, what about people that you knew up with, that you grew up with? These are all challenging inside that. Teachers are great human beings. They're great human beings, but do they have finance mastered? Here's the thing I'm going to tell you, that if you're learning from people that don't have that situation mastered, don't learn from them, because they don't know what they're teaching you. They don't know what they're teaching you. You have no idea of what to teach you. If someone said to me, Dr. T, you know what? You're so good at teaching about brain and rewiring and helping people heal from all these challenges in their life. You're so good. You should teach me cupcake baking. You'd say, what? Like, that sounds so stupid. You're so good at health and business, and you should teach me how to bake cupcakes, because you are not the expert in it and you should learn from it. But here's the thing, what we do. We learn from our parents, our family, our friends, our society, our religion, everyone else who's stuck in that capacity, and then we learn their mentality inside of our own. And that's why this framework, if we go back to the board here, I want to show you this framework again. If we look at the framework around this, this is essential to understand. This is the past challenges you've gone through. If these are still holding on, you're going to set yourself up in the future for fantasies inside of your life or nightmares. Because if you've made money, you're going to lose it. You're going to have a nightmare. If haven't made money, you're going to have a fantasy of what you want to do to have more pleasure in the future inside that. Because here's the thing that I want you to realize, is that your money is a mental health game. It's a game of mental health. And we've got to be able to master mental health, money, and business inside of it. Okay? We've got to be able to master this side of this. Mental health and business and money go hand in hand. I'll give you the stats on this. It's really interesting, right? The financial stress inside of our life leads to insomnia or other sleep difficulties. I'll give you an example. How many people on this call, in this conversation, wake up at 4 a.m. worried about bills and money payments? Please put up your hands. Yes, you do. I know you do. Of course you do, right? That's because at 4 a.m., your brain is increased with cortisol and your stress system kicks in, and you lead to insomnia, or you can't sleep at night because your brain is still functioning, worried about how you're actually going to pay those bills. Nothing will keep you tossing and turning more than night than unpaid bills or loss of income. Here's why I want you to understand that. Because if you don't have money in today's society, someone comes to attack you. It's no different. Like, we don't live in the jungle in the Amazon, right? We don't live in the Amazon in that capacity to sit and say, hey, look, you know what? There's a tiger that's coming. There's a wolf that's coming. Those days of our survival are gone. Today, it is money. Money is a form of survival. Terry, you're putting down something interesting here. I need progesterone to sleep. And I agree. People will take hormones, drugs, and all these factors to balance their hormones. But what begins that process? I tell you as a fact, it's the way that you think. I'm not to say that progesterone is not needed for your system, but if you actually rewire it and are actually healthy with your financial state, you're not going to need the progesterone. That's what I'm trying to say here in this situation. If we look at it, stress on your health, on weight gain or weight loss. When you wake up at night or you don't sleep as well, your body releases this thing called cortisol that causes you to have increased weight. It's an inflammatory process. So here's what I want you to do. Think about the time you're most stressed in your life. I guarantee you put on weight. I guarantee it. There's no question about it, because of stress and cortisol that's released inside of it. So if now your weight goes up, your stress goes up, your inflammation goes up, what does that mean? It means that it's going to affect your health overall, depression. Living under the cloud of money problems can leave anyone feeling down and hopeless. and struggling to concentrate or make decisions. How many people have ever had some sort of brain fog in their day-to-day life? Put up your hands. It's going to be 80% of you, I guarantee it. Right? Because that brain fog is actually a mild form of depression because of the amyloid and sugars in your brain. According to a study in Nottingham in the UK, people who struggle with debt are more than twice as likely to suffer with depression. Okay, now you tell me, when you see these ads on TV and you see people sitting there talking about, drugs and, take this drug and I take this information around, or take this, no one sits there and says, hey, has anyone addressed your financial situation? No, they just say, take this drug and you can have 108 side effects of it, but take it anyways. Inside of it. And you know what? Your insurance company will cover it. Big fucking deal. What is that doing for your life? Nothing. Nothing. Twice as likely to suffer from depression. What they'll do is they'll be happy to give you an antidepressant, an SSRI, to do that, instead of empowering your life and educating you how to actually take charge of your brain and how to take charge of your thinking so that you don't need those drugs. I know people that are on SSRIs. Look, in this conversation right now, out of 210-ish people that are on this conversation right now, I guarantee you, of the women that are on here, 55% of the women on this conversation are on some sort of antidepressant medication between the ages of 25 and 60. 55% of women are on some sort of antidepressive medication inside that. That is a huge statistic. Huge statistic. Where the problem is that actually the problem doesn't begin with the lack of brain dopamine. It becomes because of financial chaos. It comes because of financial chaos inside of it. Anxiety. Anyone ever suffer from anxiety? Put up your hands. 80% of you will put up your hands. Okay? Anxiety. Money can be a safety net, and without it, you feel vulnerable and anxious. And all the worrying you do about unpaid bills and loss of income can trigger anxiety symptoms such as a pounding heartbeat, sweating, shaking, even panic attacks. Anyone ever have any of these before in your life? Put up your hands. Of course you did. I have too. That's part of life. How we navigate that, TJ, is the important part of it. That's why I'm super proud of you in what you're doing for yourself with mastery, right? Because if you don't navigate these symptoms that we have, these symptoms that we're dealing with, they're the feedback that's trying to wake you up to the problems of your life that are in there. Not a drug, not a fucking medication, not some sort of symptom inside that. That's not saving you. That's literally allowing you to continue to live in desperation, not inspiration. Relationship. Money is often the site of the most common issues between couples that argue about it. Left unchecked, financial stress can cause angry, irritable, loss of interest in sex, and wear away the foundations of a relationship. Now, I'll tell you this, even more than that, the number one cause of divorce in this country is not intimacy. The number one cause is finance. Money. Money is the number one cause of this. So if you don't handle money and become in fair exchange with your relationship, what happens is that you actually lose the relationship. Social withdrawal. Financial worries can clip your wings and cause you to withdraw from friends, curtail your social life, retreat into a shell, which most people feel worse. I was listening to a podcast 3 days ago, on my workout, and it said this. Interestingly enough, people now suffer more, especially in the age group of a lot of you between over 55 years old. The number one ailment is not a physical condition, it's loneliness. It's loneliness. People are left so alone inside their life. They don't handle their social life. They don't go out and create friends and social activity inside this. And they're now showing that social anxiety and loneliness is worse than smoking. It's worse than smoking. It's crazy. Because look, I just went to Italy this year. And how many people have ever been to Italy and see all the 80-year-olds sitting around smoking their brains out? Right? You see it. They're smoking and they say, well, it's because they have olive oil and they walk all the time. And yeah, maybe there's some truth to that. But I also think that the social structure of Italians is a huge component of it. If you study the blue zones in the book Blue Zones, I can't remember the author inside of it, but the blue zones, social is a huge component of it. The more isolated and alone someone becomes, they can't do it. Now you tell me, if you don't have the finances, the funds to be able to go out on trips and excursions and events in your life, what happens? Social withdrawal. It's all a part of it. You're not running from it. Physical ailments. If you're not managing your finances, headaches, GI problems, high blood pressure, heart disease. I have a friend of mine, he's a cardiologist. If we can come off this slide just for a second. He's a cardiologist. And I asked him the question. I said, so what are the top 3 causes of ailments that you see coming into your office? And he says, look, he goes, it's not what you think it is. I said, really? Tell me. I said, I'm really interested. He said, the number 1 cause of people coming into my office is family issues. As a cardiologist, family problems. Number 2 cause of people going to a cardiologist is financial challenges and the stress from finances. And number 3 cause of why people are going to a cardiologist, according to him, in his office at least, I'm not generalizing the subject, is that they didn't live their life. And they're at this point in their life and they have regrets on the things that they wish they went after. That's huge. That's huge if you look at it, right? Because if today you are struggling with high blood pressure or heart disease, it's because your sympathetic nervous system, you're scared, you're feared, is taking your nervous system in charge. There's only 2 reasons for high blood pressure, 3 reasons for high blood pressure, believe it or not. 1, it's sympathetic. It's fear. But the doctor doesn't tell you that. They just sit and say you got to lower your salt intake, right? How many people have lowered their salt intake or heard of people lowering their salt intake and still has blood pressure issues? Yep, it's all there. Okay, diabetes. Also, it's because of stress inside of it. When you're stressed out, let's go to the board. I want to draw this. I want to show you this. I'm going to have some fun this morning. I'm talking about health and money. Life couldn't be better. If this is a blood vessel here, let's do it in red. If this is a blood vessel here, inside this, you now have, and this is the muscle around it, and this is a muscle inside of here, okay? So let's talk about this just for a second. If we understand high blood pressure, you have types of nerves that go to this. Let's do a different color. Inside this, okay? Now this is a nerve. I'm not going to tell you what it releases, a neurotransmitter of acetylcholine or norepinephrine inside this. But all I want you to understand, actually I will tell you, epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are from the sympathetic nervous system. This means that you're afraid. There's fear. There's scarcity inside that, okay? And if any of you are stressed, I promise you, your body's releasing norepinephrine. What it's going to do, it's going to go and send messages to these muscles right here to sit and say, you know what? We're under attack. We're under attack. When we're under attack, what do? Do the muscles relax and be calm and loosey-goosey and easy? Or do they get stressed, ready to fight? They get stressed, ready to fight. They become tense inside that. Okay, if they become tense, it sounds pretty simply. They constrict, right? Shelley says, that's absolutely right. So if you're stressed about bills because you haven't learned the management of bills and management of money inside that, these things contract. These muscles now contract. So if these contract, the blood vessel volume here now gets shrunken from here into here. And now that air or the blood vessel is more narrow inside that. Okay, I'm not a physics professor, but I think we got this. If it's more narrow, is there more pressure or less pressure in that blood vessel? More pressure. More pressure. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Come off the slides. Come off this for a second. Let me ask you a question. When you went to your doctor and they said you have high blood pressure, did they ask you about your financial bills? Did they ask you about your financial life? Did they ask you about your circumstances and making sure that you're thinking about money in the correct fashion and your and the stresses in your life? No, what they say is, you know what? You've got to relax. You got to meditate. You got to sit and read. You got to take more time for yourself. And there's no solution to it inside of it. But they're also quick to give you the blood pressure medications and tell you just take these drugs, take these medications inside of it. And you continue taking that. Not to mention it's going to cause you impotence. It's not to mention it's going to cause you renal failure. Not to mention it's going to cause you kidney disease inside of it. Just take this blood, take this medication inside of it. I'm not attacking medicine. I'm simply saying that if you don't take charge of your health and your finance, you're going to be left to the relegations of having to take medications without taking control of your life. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? Okay, that's the other factor. Now, I'm not going to get too complex into this because you have a kidney here. And it has what's called a renin-angiotensin system. You don't need to know all of that. All it basically is saying is that the blood volume in here, there's not enough water inside of here. The system is not going to get enough water and pressure inside of here, so the blood vessels are going to get dried out, so there's less fluid. That's all I want you to understand here. Less fluid. So does that make it thicker in your blood? 100%. If it's thicker in there, is that going to be more pressure or less pressure? More pressure. More pressure inside this. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Just explain to you high blood pressure. Right? That's high blood pressure. So if you don't understand why you're getting high blood pressure, but you're sitting there taking medications for high blood pressure, and you're taking these drugs inside of it, and not realizing that your financial health is 100% correlated to the way that your body is functioning, the health in your life, you're going to be left to a drug and a relegation of a medication inside that. But if you can go back and change your life and rewire inside this, then you go back and say, hold on, wait a minute. I got to change this. The doctor will say, you know what, you got to lower your salt intake and your sodium intake. You know what people do is they lower their sodium intake so far because they stop that, and then their brain starts not working properly. And they feel tired, and they feel like they don't have any energy inside that. Because you need a proper amount of sodium. Because in your cells, if this is a cell inside of here, it's sodium that actually allows it information to carry across. It actually is what's taking the information inside the cell and the DNA for it to work. And the mitochondria inside of here, they all need salt. But what we do is we're eating the wrong things because we're not valuing ourselves, and we're putting this pressure inside this. Let's talk about diabetes just for a second, okay? If this is your blood vessel, and you have this thing in here called glucose, GC, baby, right? Glucose. And this is a cell. Let's say this is a muscle cell in here. Now, what happens is this. Several things. Now, this is not the only cause of it, but this is the psychosomatic conditioning inside of this for you. Is this valuable? You guys getting anything inside this? Yeah, a couple people are liking it. Okay, good. That's fantastic. So, if we look at this, glucose is the organ in your body that, or the molecule in your body that gives you energy. And glucose is essential inside your system. Now, when you go to get a blood test, they check your glucose. It's called an A1C. If you know your sugar test, right? They say, I'm going to check your glucose A1C. And it says HbA1c. And you're looking at, what are all these letters? I don't understand all these letters. Well, let me explain to you what the letters mean. It means that it checks for the last 3 months the amount of glucose that's been in there. Okay? And it should be under 6.0. Under 6.0, that means you're healthy. Okay? It means that you don't have diabetes. It means your body is taking the sugars that you're eating and removing or using them enough, and the body is functioning correctly. If you have diabetes, diabetes is not a bad thing by any means. It just means that you have eyes, kidney, and nerve disease. These are the factors that come up. Now, we know when the body has too much sugar inside of it, it leads to heart disease, high blood pressure, all these factors inside of it because it's under stress. So let's just take this for example. You have glucose in here. The number one source of glucose that's needed is your muscles. The more muscle you have in your body, the more glucose is used. Number one. Number two is this thing that we all have to talk about and understand. It's kind of this interesting thing that kind of looks kind of like this, and it's called the brain. The brain uses 120 grams of sugar just to process, just to live, just to exist. Now, if you're a genius like Mark Thompson over here, I know it's going to be more, right? If you're kind of less than that, like me, maybe it's 100, I don't know. But the brain is only using 120 grams of sugar a day. Okay, let's talk about it a second because people are doing a lot of this crap out there too. People are saying, I'm going to do the keto diet. Anyone ever tried the keto diet before? Some of you have. Krista has. You have not? You have. Oh, yeah. She's like, oh, yeah, I have. Okay. The keto diet makes you lose your brain function because it goes into a survival mechanism. And your brain and all your other organs stop working properly. And it causes liver disease inside of it. Go look it up. It's called And it's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. NAFLD is what it's called inside that. Okay. If this is the sugar that goes into a muscle, a bicep, let's say, okay, in your bulging biceps, it's in there. And it says, okay, you know what? We need sugar in the form of glycogen to be going inside of this here. Okay, glycogen gets in there, muscle uses, contracts it, fantastic. Now this sugar starts says, hey, you know what? It's cool. Oh, not this one. There we go. This is getting used, this is getting used. It's not staying in there, right? Cool, there's just a couple pieces of sugar still in the bloodstream. No big deal. It's all right. Their body will use it. You'll go for a walk, you'll energize, you'll listen to this, your brain start using things. Great. Okay. Fantastic. Now the sugar gets used. But here's the thing. If your body is in a stress state, remember we said stress state, right? Fight or flight, defensive. I've got bills. Come off the screen here. I've got bills. I've got stress. I got unpaid bills. I got to pay my mortgage. I got to create more income. I have all these employees to build. I'm trying to build a business. I'm trying to scale my business. I'm trying to pay my fucking bills, Doc. You don't get it. I got to survive. You know what it takes to survive? What do you think it means every time you say to survive? Your whole nervous system stays in a state of stress. In a stress, does your nervous system and your muscles contract or are they loose? Put in the chat box for me. Are they contracting? They're contracting. Very good. So when they're in a stress state, they're trying to make sure that they're contracting and the blood sugars are moving, and they're actually putting sugar back into the bloodstream. Because it's making sure that your muscles have sugar, but now it's dumping it all back into the bloodstream to make sure that there's enough sugar in the bloodstream to move and get your brain working to get the body going in an attack mode. So you tell me, think about this just for a second. If you're stressed and you're stressed about bills and you're waking up at 4 a.m, is the blood sugar going to be higher or lower? Higher. It's going to be elevated. So therefore, when they do this A1C test, is it going to look that your blood sugars are higher or lower? It's going to say higher. Then what are they going to say? They're going to say you're diabetic. You know what? You're on diabetic medication for the rest of your life because you have a lack of metformin in your body. Or a lack of, Ozempic in your system. And they're blaming your food, not your psychology. And I'm trying to tell you right now that it's not just food. Food is a factor. I'm not taking away from it. But the way that you're thinking also is that. I remember I had a patient one time when I used to do some neuropathy care. This guy, this is how he came into my office. He came in, he's about 6'4", power builder. I'm 5'10" on a good day. And a little Indian doctor, right? He's 6'3", 6'4", built like a rock. Built like a rock. And he comes in, he said, Doc, he goes, I can't believe this shit. They labeled me as diabetic. They said my blood sugar, look at my blood sugars. I'm at 6.2. He's like, I don't understand. I'm starting getting nerve pain. I'm starting getting foot pain. You got to fix this, man. I'm like, yeah. And here's the thing. Is I did everything I knew how to do. Everything I've done to help 80% of my patients get better from this neuropathy foot pain. He was young. He was barely 48, 49 years old. And his girlfriend was a nutritionist. So he was eating all the right things. But he was still diabetic. So I worked on him for 2 months. And truth be told, I actually wasn't able to help him. He didn't get better. He didn't get better. Because do you think someone who's stressed out and always in this format is going to continue to put blood sugar into the blood? And is their blood always going to look diabetic? 100%. 100%. And that's why I'm saying to you guys is that if you don't handle the financial stresses in your life, your physical ailments are a follow-up to that. They're a follow-up to that. They're huge inside of it. So you've got to look at this and say, okay, how do you want to live inside of it? Because I promise you, this is why I got out of patient care. Because you really couldn't help people understand this. And no doctor does it. Because you only get paid in medicine or in healthcare or anything when you treat the patient, not actually educating the patient to empower their life. Does that make sense? Like, that's why I'm in the game I am. I've talked to my mentors. They're like, you're making money. There's easier ways to make money than what I do. Sunday afternoon, sitting here educating because I love to do it, but there's easier ways to do it. I could open a bunch of 7-Elevens and do perfectly fine for myself, right? But when you empower and you educate people, that changes the game. That's what it's about, right, Rose? It's because when you learn how to do something different, right? You learn how to do this stuff. Then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, what he's saying is making sense. And nobody's teaching that. Nobody's talking about that. And there's so much to empower your health with that it's important to do this stuff. So, okay, what else is happening? People have unhealthy coping mechanisms in their brain. Drinking too much, right? This whole thing in society about alcohol. And I'm not an anti-alcohol guy by any means. I'm not saying that. But alcohol is a neurotoxin. It is a poison. Especially in the U.S. inside of it. If you have a glass of wine from Italy, the sulfides and preservatives are different. But the alcohol in the U.S. is very different inside that. And alcohol is a neurotoxin causing dopamine reaction. And that dopamine actually causes, and you'll see in a little bit, it makes you think in the wrong way. And what it does, it actually destroys your liver, it destroys your nerves, it destroys your brain's functioning inside that. So we got to be very careful with that as a mechanism. Gambling, overeating, right? When we're stressed, what do? We reach for food. I need food. I got to eat more. We don't need to eat more. We actually need to cut down our calories, not increase, and put down quality calories, right? So here's what I'm going to tell you. You got to operate from the 3 brains. And this is what I call the 3 brains in your life. The 3 brains in your life. You have the amygdala, right? This is the emotional center of the brain. I call this protection, right? Then I talk about your hippocampus. This is your limbic system of the brain. This is your security. And then you have your medial prefrontal cortex. The medial prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that creates logical decisions in your life. It's the abundance place. If I go to the board here, I want to explain this to you, right? If this is the amygdala here, and this is the limbic part of the brain, and this is the medial prefrontal cortex, MPFC, inside this, medial prefrontal cortex. Please understand this. Many of you said this earlier today, and I want you to understand this. I'm giving you context of what we're talking about here. This is your past. That diagram that I drew earlier, the past, and this being the future, inside this is your past. And any issue, some people like to call it a trauma. I don't like that word. It's a root experience. Any root experience in the past is going to create a fantasy or a nightmare in the future. So if your amygdala is holding on to emotions, your limbic center, which is the security center of the brain, will not manage money properly. It won't be able to manage it. And you'll constantly use your brain in this figure 8 loop to loop, not infinity, from positive to negative, versus moving it to the point of being able to manage it where you could balance it. And the more you can balance it here from security and create security for yourself, then and only then can you move yourself to the prefrontal cortex, which is about abundance. Now, why is this a financial principle? It has everything to do with your finances. It has everything to do with your finances. Because your nervous system here is working in a highly sympathetic state. That means all the health ailments I just showed you also show up there. Because it's constantly in a form of protection. You're always feeling like you're scared, like you're on the last edge, and you can never actually relax and breathe. How many people can relate to that feeling? That you just, I can't breathe. And you spend your life working your tail off to get there. Or you realize that, hey, look, I'm working, and you know what? You're successful. You've got money. But like we just said earlier with Patrick, you've actually got money, but now you're afraid of losing it. You're afraid of losing it. That's also a form in the amygdala in a protection state. So please understand, just because you have money does not make you wealthy. If you don't have money, it also doesn't make you wealthy. Because wealth is a state of consciousness, not just a financial position. I know many people who are super wealthy financially, multi-million dollar business, $20, $30 million businesses, but their nervous systems are a wreck. Their health is a wreck because they're afraid of losing everything they built inside of it. They're afraid of losing everything. That's a huge huge population inside that. So we've got to look at this and sit and say, are you functioning from a place of the amygdala in protection, or are you functioning from the security inside of this, or are you functioning from the medial prefrontal cortex? I would bet if you're on this conversation today, you're not in the position of the medial prefrontal cortex. Some of you may be in the position of security, but the majority of people who are going to be on this conversation today are probably functioning from the amygdala. And I want to just say this right now. That doesn't mean you're good or bad, right or wrong. It has no judgment on it. It just means that you've got work to do. We all have work to do. Does that make sense? Right? It just means we've got to do work. We've got to heal ourselves and heal our body and our brain so that we can move ourselves up to the next level. That's it. It's not saying you're a good person. It's not saying you got to release and you have judgments, you have this. No, it doesn't mean any of that shit. There's no judgment on it, Rose. It's simply, hey, look, this is just kind of where you are, and let's take the path to actually heal this so that you can actually manage your money right. Remember I said at the beginning of the statement of the whole day, I said, if you manage your money wisely, you'll have more money to manage. Is it starting to make more sense why I made that statement? Right? If you have more money to manage and you manage it well, you'll have more money to manage because of it. Because if you get this wrong, what happens is you consistently live on the yo-yo. And the yo-yo most people live on is this. Depending on what point in your life cycle you are, typically they say statistically there's three. You'll have a success, and then you'll have a failure. Then you what? You'll rise again, success, and then you'll have a failure. And you have a success, and you'll have a failure, and then you'll drop out midline here. Because you'll be exhausted of the up and down cycle inside of it. And so most people in business or entrepreneurship and that's say, you know what? I'm going to succeed inside this. And they think they're going to get there. And what they do is they probably end up pretty much at the same level that they started. Or people at some point when it gets too low inside of it or too high inside of it will die and cause death, and they'll be leaving their family at that level. However, I believe wealth should go up like this. And if you've managed your money wisely and manage your life wisely, money will do this. You'll have moments of up and down. I'm not taking those away, but you'll minimize them. But you'll constantly keep moving upwards. I don't know about you, but who wants to play the second game over the first game? I definitely do. I definitely do. I'm not, again, not from an ivory tower. This is how I was taught. This is how most of us are taught. Look, we're taught by our parents. We're taught by our religion. We're talking about family. We're talking about friends, family, other business leaders that are teaching this. But no one's sitting there teaching, okay, how does the brain work in this process? Because here, let's go back to the board again. We talked about this neurotransmitter called success, called dopamine. This part here is your dopamine cycle. I don't even know what I wrote there. Dopamine. Okay. If dopamine goes up, you have the other cycle here called norepinephrine and epinephrine inside this. So as one goes up, and this becomes your what's called parasympathetic, this becomes your sympathetic inside this. So you tell me, the more you chase the high, are you breeding the chaos on the below? I can't see you guys inside that. So I was just in Vegas. Do people go to Vegas and go to the casinos to lose? No. They end up losing because, you know what? There's a reason those casinos are gigantic. You don't have a problem getting 10,000 steps in a Vegas casino. But do you think they're making money because people are safe and secure with their money there? Nope. Because everybody goes to Vegas to try and win. My old roommate, my old college roommate, he used to be he was a great guy. He's 7, 8 years older than I am. And he was the mentality like in we grew up in St. Louis. I went to school in St. Louis. And in St. Louis, he would go to the casinos. And he'd go all night. And he'd just sit there and smoking cigarettes and sitting on the board and just ding, 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 and just sitting there all night. And he'd come back 5, 6 times in a row. Did you make any money? No. How much you lose? I don't know. I lost track. How did you make any money? I don't know. I lost track. You make any money? I lost track. And then one time, he comes into my room, opens my door up. He said, "Let's go, kid. We're going." I said, what are we doing? What are we doing? He said, "We're going to breakfast." And I'm like, all right, he won. I said, "How much you win?" "It's $5,000. I said, "Cool. It's good." He said, "I'm buying breakfast today." I said, "Okay, let's go. I'm in for breakfast." I'm a college kid. Of course I'm in for breakfast, right? Free food. I'll take it. I'm in. He says, "Okay, let's go." So we go to breakfast. And I saw this pattern happen over time. And the pattern was this, is when he'd lose, he'd end up coming home, going to bed. And I'd ask him how much, he'd never have an answer. But every time he won, he would tell me exactly the amount that he won. Because we only keep track of our successes, but we lose track of our failures inside of it. But it's our failures that are actually causing us more chaos. But it's this chasing of the win that causes us to lose inside that. It's chasing that dopamine that causes and breeds the chaos on below. Okay? Does this make sense? Now, here's the thing, because if you get this right in your body and you operate from the 3 levels inside the brain, you grow in a trajectory of a linear path with minor up and downs. If not, you play in the highs and lows. If you're trying to grow your business, you're trying to grow your income, you're trying to scale your business, or you're trying to build multiple businesses inside of it, that's great. Most people are trying to build businesses so fast and trying to get these exponential massive growths inside of it, and they have a high stress input and a high stress output inside of it, versus taking your brain on a 10% growth, which is actually the trajectory that the brain can manage and handle. It's actually 8%. If you look at the stock market growth over the last, basically since its inception, it's had an 8% trajectory. There's a reason why it's 8%. But our brain can manage 10%. Because if I said to you that, you know what, if you have $100 today, and if I asked to borrow $10 from you, you'd say, okay. If I asked to borrow $20 from you, you'd say, hold on, wait. You'd start getting nervous, wouldn't you, Catherine? You'd start saying, I don't know, $20? But if I said, can I get $50 from you? You'd say, no, because you wouldn't be able to manage it. But if I said to you, if you give me your $100, but you'll win and you'll make $50 off of that, would you be more prone to give that $100 away? Yes, you would. Because you're looking forward to more. That's dopamine, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you to use that as an example. Because if you think you're going to get more, you're going to sit and say, hey, look, I'm going to get more out of that. And you feel better about it. But the truth is that you can only manage 10% growth or 10% loss. So if you're managing your business and you're managing your life and you're managing your income, you've got to match it on 10% level inside that. The other thing I want you to realize is that the more options you have, the more dopamine gets charged up. The more options you have, the more dopamine you have in your system, right? So what I tell people is that you want to reduce your options. Reduce your options, right? I got Carla on my team here. Carla is one of the most wizardry people I know. She's a wizard. And she'll give you Dr. T, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do that. You could do all of these things. All of these things. But here's what happens to my brain. Have you ever gotten to the point where there's lots of options and you just don't know what the fuck to do next? Like, I don't know. There's too many things to think about. So what I tell my team is this. Give me 2 options. And don't make me think about what they have to be. Go do the research. Go find out what that is. What are the best 2 options? And then give me a decision off of that. Right, Carla? Don't I tell you? There's too much, Carla. Too much. Simplify for me. Carla, simplify. Right? Because your brain can't process that many things. And it has too many options inside this. This is a research study was done. If you look at it, this is a research study done in ThinkLab laboratories. And they found that one of the reasons that there's so much anxiety in financial decisions because there's so many choices to make. And there's not really a clear-cut answer to do that. And I'll give you an example of that, right? You could invest, if you try to be an investor in today's world, you could be an investor in crypto, you could be an investor in real estate, you could invest in stock market, you could invest in funds, you can invest in annuities, you can invest in lots of it. You can invest in businesses, you can invest in mining, you can invest in commodities, you can invest in agriculture, for crying out. There's so many things to invest in. And before you look at it, everyone's created a new financial product for someone to invest. Life insurance you can invest into, right? Whole life policy, universal index. Everyone's got the next best thing to invest in. But let me ask you this question, right? Which one do you invest in? Boom, paralysis kicks in. There's so many. There's so many. So if I can give you a word of advice in investing, and I'm not trying to be an investment advisor by any means, but pick what you're comfortable. What you know, study the shit out of that, and know that all the way through. Because then everyone says you got to diversify. You do. But do what you know inside of that. Because if you get it right, what you're going to end up doing is make a lot of money in that. But if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to feel like you have all this stuff, but you don't know what that means. You're going to do what other people told you to do inside of it, but not really succeed from it. So the next thing I want you to do is make sure you remove your financial root blockage. We've been talking about it in some levels here this morning, right? You've got to find out what your root blockage is and find out where your root experience is around it. I don't like calling it a trauma because a trauma insinuates it's a negative thing. It doesn't have to be a trauma. You could have a great life. People sometimes sit there, come off the slides, people come to me all the time and say, well, Dr. T, you can rewire anything. You can rewire rapes. You can rewire, people who've lost massive businesses and health conditions. And I can. It's true. I'm not saying I can't. However, and a big however, what if you haven't had that? What if you're just like an average Joe, like me, and sit and say, hey, look, I wasn't raped. I didn't lose this massive business. I didn't have these major traumas. Then what? The reality is it doesn't matter, right? You don't have to have these massive traumas in your life. You could have one massive trauma or many micro traumas or micro root experiences, we like to call them, that will culminate to the same level of inside of it. Does that make sense, everybody? Because sometimes people would say, I don't have this massive thing, Doc. My life was good. My parents, they're pricks. They actually gave me a good lilife. At least if I had some sort of a major things, like I could have blamed them, but they actually were good. They were loving. They were nice people. I could have. I don't have what you're telling me I do. Truth is that we do. You could have these micro perceptions in your life that have built over time inside that. That's why I say to you, you've got to look at your financial root blockages and get this right. Because if you get it right, what's going to happen is this, is that you're going to actually move your body to feel connected and you're going to see the freedom. What will happen if you go to the board here is if you get this right, let me tell you, your brain goes from this to this to this instantly. It goes from this to this to this instantly. And what will happen is your nervous system begins to function on a different level. And the nervous system functions on a different level. And you begin to heal properly. They've shown specifically, when your brain is functioning correctly, the medial prefrontal cortex that I'm showing you here, this part of the brain here is what's making your financial decisions. And if something is out of balance in your perception, you use a different part of your brain in its analysis. So it's essential to make sure that you remove the past financial blockage inside of it. Right? Or if you get this wrong, you're going to continue living that yo-yo life. You're going to continue living in that yo-yo life. Up and down, up and down. Dopamine, norepinephrine, dopamine, neuroepinephrine, dopamine, norepinephrine. And it's going to go up and down. And here's the thing, is you don't have to believe me. It's a science. This is how the brain, the sine wave, is a universal wavelength. It's a science. If you look at this over time, I guarantee it. Like this is how this works. Health ailments show up, then they go away. Health ailments show up, and then they go away. That's why they're called relapses, for crying out loud, right? Why did they relapse? We have psychological relapses. So I don't know what it is for you. I don't know what it specifically is for you. But I ask you the question, What do you think it is? Right? What do you think it is inside of your level? If I look at it, I mean, if I gave you this list inside of it, there's divorce, there's money stolen from you. There's an example. You hit high levels of success. You were too successful, too fast. I mean, you've heard that saying before, right? I always think of Al Bundy, right? Al Bundy is a great example. You guys remember Married with Children, Al Bundy? Some of you do? Ah, I grew up watching Al Bundy, right? Peaked in high school, that was a high school quarterback, right? And Peg was the cheerleader inside of it. They both peaked. And then like he goes and his life is horrible. Yeah, I loved it, right? It was a great show. It's hilarious. He was brilliant inside of it. But maybe that's it. Maybe an IRS audit. I don't know what it is. But if I was to ask you, what do you think it is for you? What do you think is your financial root experience or root experiences that can be there? I want you to let's take 3 minutes here. And I want you to actually list it out. Do some work here. Let's be very clear on what they are for you. Let's find them so that we can make sure that we can go through it and make sure it's cleared and you know what you're dealing with, right? Let's put 3 minutes on the board. I'll see you guys in 180 seconds. Go. Okay, guys, well done. Great job, everyone. Great job. I'm sure that wasn't easy, but let's do this. We're going to go into another breakout room real quickly, and I'm going to put each person again. Same rules. We'll apply the same rules. Shortest hair, you're the timekeeper, or you're the leader. Longest hair, you're the timekeeper. And then we're going to give you each. Let's just keep it simple. We don't need to elaborate a lot on it. And the way to answer this is very simple, right? Just if someone says all this stuff, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So we're not going to put a whole lot of time on the board because it shouldn't take you that long just to list them out inside of it. But let's put 30 seconds on the board for each person. So timekeeper, leader, you're putting 30 seconds on the board for each person. Everyone else inside that. So you're going to have 4 or 5 people in the room. I should see you in about 5 minutes. I'll see you in 5. Go. Welcome back. Great job. Great job. I'd love to hear from some of you on what are these big financial blocks that we have. Is it divorce? Is it bankruptcy? Is it just, you know what? It's been a bunch of micro traumas, micro situations. And stuff. I don't know. What is it for you? I'd love to hear from maybe 3, 4 people here right now. And I want to start while we're getting people pulled up here. And I'm going to ask for your forgiveness and pardon if I could. You know, I'm looking at my clock right now. It's 2:22, and I probably have more content to give than 3 o'clock. If it's okay with you, do you mind if I go a little bit over time? Do I have your permission to give you more value, give you more information, and teach you more? Do I have your permission to do that? Okay, great. So I want to be respectful of people's time, but I've got a lot to cover here, so we're still going to go through some stuff. So great. Who do we have first?
Hey, Dr. T, let's head over to Tony. Give it for Tony, everybody.
Tony, you're back, my man.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, great. I invested some money with a person and it was a Ponzi scheme. So, and it was some serious coin, dabbling with my business and not being committed to it. And then
what kind of business are you in, Tony?
I do construction consulting, but I want to do construction marketing.
Got it.
Okay. And then I've hired several coaches in the past and they've overpromised and under-delivered.
Got it. So you've gone down the journey inside of this, right? And when was this Ponzi scheme thing?
That was about 20 years ago.
Okay. And so you look like you look like you're maybe mid-50s?
Maybe a little more, but yes.
I know I'm being polite.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So in that, would you say that your business, since that Ponzi scheme hit, was there an invisible ceiling that was hit in your income, you feel?
I've always done well with my income.
Sure.
I'm the top earner in my dollars for hours. But that's not where real money can be made. I want to do a consulting business.
No, I agree with that. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, do you feel when you look, okay, your your top line revenue, I get, right? Like, fine, you can make on the top line. But do you feel like your personal growth of finances became capped and hidden invisible ceiling? I'm sure you did well. I'm not saying you didn't.
Yeah.
But was there more that could have been left and taken? Did the net worth change, or was the capacity built on that or capped on that? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, it was capped. Yeah.
That's my point. Right. So that is the reason I'm using that, Tony, and thank you for being so open and vulnerable, is that because that root experience of that Ponzi scheme capped your income. Most people, not you, I don't know this, so I'm not putting this in your lap by any means, but most people will keep it to the level of survival because the brain isn't built on this game of abundance when we're living in the amygdala. It gives you just as much money to survive. So please understand, everybody, if you're listening, watching this, right, you're thinking, oh, he's just doing Q&A. He's not teaching. No. I'm giving you the gold right here. The gold is here, and to help you understand is that if you think that you're going on abundance, that's a delusion, right? It's not about that. You have to get the survival factor, because you will always bottom out at the least level of survival you create for yourself. Okay. So there's two factors. We got to rewire that past, and we've got to rewire the survival factor, both inside that, right? Inside that. Business coaches. Yeah. So there's good ones, there's bad ones. That's all I can tell you about that. There's, the coaching industry is very interesting in my opinion. That's why I humbly don't call myself a coach. I intentionally don't call myself a coach. And I sit and say, if anyone calls me, I'm a mentor, if anything. But I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. That's what I do. I'm a doctor and a teacher inside that. And do I have coaching programs? Yes, we do. Yeah, but here's what I'll tell you about coaching, Tony, if I can. If the person, they may not have been a problem, because I deal with a lot of coaches, and a lot of them will come to me and sit and say, look, the biggest problem we have is to take people from where they are to the next level. We have all the strategy under the sun. What we don't have is we can't get their mind to break free of where they're at.
Fair.
Right? So what I do is I help those coaches and their clients and then go fix that. So it's not to say, and maybe I don't want to say that, and maybe I'll say it this way is that maybe the coaches weren't bad. It's maybe that your wiring wasn't going to allow them to system to build as well.
That's fair. Yes.
Right? Because their system, their strategy is great. But if the consciousness isn't in the right place, the strategy won't trump it. That's why I started the whole day by saying you can have all the greatest strategy in the world, but if the consciousness will never, your strategy will never out-trump consciousness.
Okay.
It's impossible to do that. So it's something to consider inside that, right?
Good.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Let's give it up for Tony.
Good job, Tony. Next up, Dr. T, we have Elizabeth. Give it up for Elizabeth, everybody.
Miss Elizabeth. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, Dr. T.
How you doing?
I am doing well. I'm happy to be here.
Great.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
you're here too. Tell
Yes,
everyone where
thank
you're
you.
from, and then what are your financial root experiences?
I'm Elizabeth Renteria, and I'm in Redondo Beach, California. Born and raised in Los Angeles. My root experiences,
Yeah.
they're definitely childhood. My father died when I was 6, and my mom, I grew up with a single mom of 4 children. And I just always heard that we couldn't afford things. And I believe I learned to limit myself even in what I asked for. And also something came up, a couple of things came up in this exercise that I haven't even thought of in decades. But one of the things it reminded me of, my very first boyfriend was buying me flowers, and I asked for carnations and daisies because I saw a sign at a local florist that they were on sale. So I was limiting my own wants and needs or desires based on what I thought was affordable.
Oh, I love that. We're going to talk about that in about 15 minutes. I'm going to get to that. You're going to be like, holy crap. Okay. Great job. Great job. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, one more.
Good, Dr. T. Next up we have is Sabina. Give it up for Sabina, everybody.
Hello, Sabina.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you? This is awesome.
That's great. I'm glad you're here. Tell everyone where you're from.
So currently I live in Colorado. I'm originally from Germany. Let's see. Yeah. So, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah. Tell us what are some of your root experiences that you've had. And I know we met a few weeks ago on a webinar and that, and you're a powerhouse and do amazing things in the world, and I love that. What do you think your root blocks are?
So I think I have a lot of, you know how you said a lot of micro experiences. I have a lot of macro experiences.
Okay.
Growing up, I grew up with my dad being an entrepreneur, and the IRS came in once and they took all of everything we had. They just, everything out of the house. So my first job was a tax preparer. So I'm incredibly good at doing taxes. That kind of like, no wonder I became that, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one was my father was an abusive alcoholic. And my mother couldn't leave because back then you had to have money or they would give you the kids. So and my mom grew up in war, and everything was always, she never wanted anything for herself. So I went the other direction. I like making money. I like being successful. And to me, the lack of money is very scary. Because it's a lack of control in my mindset.
Sure.
So I've always went the route of, my next job was a controller, and my next job became a financial advisor because I like understanding that world.
Yeah.
And I also went through a divorce, which also was a lack of control because money was all taken from me. Everything was taken from me in that situation. All I had was my kid and then my 2 children, and I became a financial single mom for 15 years without my ex doing any support. So I've always worked and became, I got my MBA, everything just to make sure I was never out of money for my kids because I want to make sure they were safe. So, and then I had to learn that I needed to not be in control. And that
Yeah.
that was an illusion. I learned that from you. So,
Yeah, well, the thing is that, right, like as you're looking at it, right, there are some big macro points here, right? And I let you continue because how many people can relate to something that Sabina said, right? Like you heard something from your dad, or maybe your dad was an alcoholic or had problems. Maybe there was an IRS thing. Maybe there was a divorce thing. Like there's so many of the big things that you're talking about inside that. And you've done things to compensate for those, which are
right.
absolutely true, right? And those could be said, okay, those great, you compensated for those situations. But, and here's the big but, is that your nervous system is still running on the patterns of those fear mechanisms.
I think so, yes.
Yes,
And
they
I
have to
see
be.
that in my business. I think I do quite well, but I always feel like I'm like not where I should be or could be or want to be.
Yeah.
You know, it's like something's still stopping me from, and when I hit a high, I drop back down, like what you were
Correct.
talking about. And yeah, so I'm excited to learn more about everything you teach. So, you know, to kind of release all that more.
I
What
love
I'm
that.
finding is I'm tired a lot, you know, and at times I have that fire inside where I'm so excited and everything's going, and then I go to a tired stage.
I'll show you what happens. Let's go to the board. Let's go to the board. I'll show you exactly what happens there. I'll show you
Okay.
exactly what happens. I'll show you exactly what happens. I don't even need to redraw it. We've already talked about it. Right here, this cycle here, I'm going to call this motivation. And people will sit and say, you know what, I need to be motivated. I need to go to a motivational program. I need to go to a motivational seminar to make myself feel better. They'll get motivated, and then 3 to 4 days later, after the motivation dies down, they come back here, and then they become depressed. And they go through motivation, depression, motivation, and depression. There's no question, right? Go to a motivational program. Go to a motivational event. You'll crash right after. You'll get sick. Your nervous system will crash, and the body will break down because of it. So most people that are going to these motivational events think and say, look, I'm going to go. I need to find some juice inside myself. I need to get motivated, right? So Sabina, just to round us out in what you were saying, is that if you're feeling a lack of energy, it's on the down cycle of your motivational distortion, is what I'm saying, right? So let's give it up for Sabina. All right, great job. Great job, everyone. You guys are doing great. So let's go through the board again, and let's talk about what we've covered. We've covered a lot. Like, we've been going 2.5 hours here, and you guys have been great in what we're discussing. But let's cover what we've talked about. We've operated from the 3 brains, right? We've talked about reducing our options. Can we get the slides? Okay. We talked about operating from our brains. We talked about reducing your options. And we talked about your financial root experiences, right? This is the 3 major areas I want you to start with right off the top inside this. Next, I want to cover with you, how do you pre-wire your fear? Because every one of us is going to live with fear, but how do you pre-wire it? What did he say? He's talking about pre-wiring? I'm talking exactly about pre-wiring. So Tony, you're saying like, I want to go into business and I'm afraid of something. How do you navigate that? How do you pre-wire for your fear? I'm going to give you 3 steps that you can handle any fear you ever want to in your life. I guarantee it. I promise you. You do the work, this fear will never exist in your life. Right? Here it is. And you're more than welcome to take a picture of this slide. Just don't share it. Take a picture of it. Just don't share it on social media because that's my IP. Take a picture of this slide for yourself. Okay? And you pre-wire the fear. What it means is this, is you assume the fear is going to turn into reality. So Celeste, right? You look at it and say, okay, let's say I'm afraid of going bankrupt. Okay, we're good. Let's just assume you went bankrupt. If it did, how would it serve you? What would be 30 benefits to you? And what if it didn't? What if you didn't go bankrupt? How would that suck? How would that be a drawback for you? Bam, fear will be gone. And you'll sit and say, what? Tony, I know it sounds crazy. You're looking at me like, Doc, really? It's this simple? It's this simple. It's this simple. We make this fear this big thing. People do all these programs and seminars on fear and fear and fear. Their life gets strangled by this fear. Just do this. You'll fix it. It'll be gone. Okay? So that's my gift to you guys to be able to use in your life. Okay? There it is. It's right there, right? Here's the last thing I want you to do. Well, not last, but here's something I want you to do, right? Negotiate without cocaine. I know. Negotiate without cocaine. And what I mean by that is this, is in your brain, you're always negotiating. You're always negotiating. You're negotiating with yourself. You're negotiating with others. You're negotiating with whether you make this decision or not make this decision. Do you learn further for yourself? Do you take this action step? Do you not take this action step? Listen to this, right? But don't you sit and continually work through your brain and negotiate whether you make a decision or don't make a decision? Think about that just for a second. How many people can attest to that? Of course you do. And when you do, what it does, it creates your nervous system to go into a state of heightened neural activity, which means this. It means this, is that literally you are causing high blood pressure, sugars to go up in your brain or in your body, precursor to neurogenic disorder, increased pressure in your nervous system, insomnia, and weight control. Here's why. Money heightens the neural activity. I'm going to read these specifically so you guys get this. When negotiating about money, a negotiation doesn't mean that you're sitting across the table having a negotiation about a $100 million deal. A negotiation about money is literally you negotiating with yourself whether you buy something or don't buy something, whether you learn more or you don't learn more, with whatever you do in your brain around money, right? When you negotiate about money, the nucleus accumbens is stimulated. This is part of the brain that is tied to the reward circuitry. So if you see greater benefit and greater reward in doing something, your brain will say, okay, let's go forward with it. If you don't, you'll stop yourself. If you see more pleasure, you'll move towards something. If you see less pleasure, you won't do it. That's how it works. That's why many people will sit and say, you know what? If I achieve this success, I'm going to now give myself a reward of a prize, a purse, some sort of entity like that, right? If I make X amount of dollars, I'm going to buy myself a Louis Vuitton purse. Or a pair of shoes, or a vacation, or something along that lines. This is this brain circuitry. But you don't need to do that, right? Because heightened neural activity is identical, get this, to those who are on cocaine. So when you set a goal and you set a reward, Darlene, I want you to hear this, because I know you've been doing this for a long time. When you listen to the past models of old psychology, and they say, set a goal so big that it scares the shit out of you. What you're doing is you're riling your brain up to the point that it's acting like it's on cocaine. And people get motivated and they get addicted to that neurostimulant inside of it. It's just like taking cocaine inside it. And what has to happen after cocaine? You crash. My old landlord in college, he was a cocaine addict. I didn't know that, but literally, he'd be all cool and that, and then he'd disappear for a week. Couldn't get the toilets fixed, couldn't get the vacuum. Like, it was a whole shit show. No pun intended. But it was horrible. We'd find out that he was a cocaine addict, and he would just crash for a week at a time. He would just sleep inside of that. Because it's the exact same mechanism inside of it. Brain scans reflect risk-taking behavior from Stanford University. They found that subjects who had naturally elevated stimulation in their nucleus accumbens would likely take riskier, buy riskier security, as in stocks, like a stock. People who had more active, the nucleus accumbens, who are more active in the reward center, are more emotional, which equals that they're more likely to take riskier items based off of emotional highs. So you remember in the beginning when I said we're going to be able to master our emotions and we're going to understand where our emotions are created from? This is where it's created from. This is why I'm sharing with you. And you're thinking, okay, Carla, think about this just for a second. If you're always on a high and always chasing that high, and when you don't get that high, don't you get pissed off, angry with the world in that capacity? Of course you do. Everyone does. Because the nervous system is functioning this way. It's not a matter of what you think you're going to do. People think that like, oh, it doesn't affect anything. You tell me right now, based on these two decisions, do you think, based on what these two slides I've given you right now, do you think you are making decisions based on what your own whim is in reality, or based on how your brain is functioning and telling you what to do? It's doing it all in the brain. So get out of this delusion, ladies and gentlemen, that you think you have choice and control in what you're doing, because you're not. The brain is already processing these things inside of it. And if you don't go back, let's go back to the board again. If you don't go back and fix this past, I'm sorry, your future is affected by the nucleus accumbens and the brain neurotransmitters. 100% of the time. You're not going to escape it. You're not going to avoid it. It is a fact of how the brain works. So think about this for a second, okay? Because you've all heard this crappy myths in your life about money. We all have. We've all heard this shit. And I'm going to break two of them in a very big way right now. Okay? How about this? Money doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. People have heard this before, right? Doesn't matter as long as you have love and emotion. That's all that matters. As long as you love me, that's all that matters. Huge fucking myth. Huge myth, Tiffany. Right? Here's a summary from the NCID, NIH government. The study took children who had parents with, I cut it off. It doesn't fit completely on the slide here because I did this. This team didn't do this. This was my slide I put in. You can see when I touch slides, this is what happens. Okay? This is not my team. This is an effect of doctors touching slides. But I'll read it to you. The study looked at the effects of money and illusion on the brain. They found that substantial evidence proved that the illusion of more money being better than originated in the prefrontal cortex. In fact, the prefrontal cortex was even more oxygenated blood when subjects were able to choose from a high-priced catalog. Hold on. Tony, I get it. You're confused. Let me break that down for what it means. Okay? Animal brain. Amygdala. Protection, security center. Medial prefrontal cortex. This is the objective part of the brain. This is the oxygenated part of the brain. This is the part of the future brain. This is the health part of the brain. What this study is verifying and says inside of this is that when you are in this place where you're looking for a deal, chasing cheap, chasing coupons inside of this, you're using this part of the brain inside this. The animal part of the brain, which is the desperate part of the brain inside of this. It's the desperate part of the brain. However, when you see a high-priced catalog and you are actually looking at higher-priced inspired activity and inspired things, you're using this part of the brain. And you're actually using oxygenation to the blood, to the brain, which is actually expanding the brain neurons and creating neurogenesis, more nerves around the brain. It's creating more nerves around the brain. Now, I'm not a genius, but you tell me, if you have more nerves in your brain, are you healthier than someone who has less nerves in their brain? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. So the myth is this: cheaper is better. Cheaper is not better. It's actually the antithesis of that. Walmart is not better for your health. Being a Walmart shopper does not make it healthier for you. Quality over quantity. That's exactly right. Quality over quantity. So if you're going to invest in something, invest in the highest priced thing that you can afford, right? The highest priced thing you can afford, and make sure it's the luxury component of what you want, because it's going to expand your brain to think in a different way. It's going to expand your brain to think in a different way. And you're going to get more oxygen to the brain because of it. Okay. Next one. Next myth. Cheaper is better. I kind of talked a little bit about this. This study took the effects of money and the illusion on the brain. They found that substantial evidence. Oh, no, that's the same study. Hold on. I'm going to go to my computer. Where's my computer? No, it's over there. Doesn't matter. I screwed the slide up. I'll tell you what it is. It's really cool. The study proved that children with parents with higher incomes had more brain neurons than children of parents who did not have money. Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What you're saying, Dr. T, is that I'm going to piss you off. You ready to get pissed off? Okay. The more broke you stay, the more broke you keep your kids. Yes, Carla, that hurts. The more broke you stay, the less health you actually give your children, because you're not allowing their brain to expand. And so here's what I'm going to tell you. Again, I said we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations. Here it is that if you don't make getting wealthy a priority in your life and increase its value in your life, your children's brains are not processing, they're not expanding, they're not neuroplastically expanding in that capacity. And if that's happening, then you are literally affecting your health and your family and your relationships because of it. And you don't have to believe me, but I'm not here sitting preaching about this, just think big, be positive bullshit. This is science inside this. This is not my opinion, even though I've seen this and I know this, right? But if you don't, your children's brains are not expanding. So a lot of times people want to say, I just want to love my kids. I just want to spend time with my kids. Cool, do that. I'm not saying no. But if you make more money, your expansion consciousness grows, your brain grows, and so does their brain inside of it. So think about that just for a second, okay? But I challenge you to sit and say, here's an opportunity for you to impact your entire life and your family, and not based on false premise inside this, right? Because I'm just going to go to this slide. If you're constantly in an emotional state, back here on the board, if you're constantly back here in the desperate state, you're going to have this desperation, which means the desperate emotions. And those desperate emotions are angry, anxious, needy, back against the wall, and elated. You'll get excited and crash, excited and crash. What I call the inspired states, which come from here, not IRS, inspired states, these are going to be grateful, joyful, and enthusiastic. Enthused from within, not outside. Not motivated. I didn't say motivated. Motivated is back here in the animal brain. So, think about that in your life. Think about that in your life. So if I was to ask you, and we're not going to go to a breakup, but I'm going to give you a minute right now. Go to a minute. On your own minute, I want you to write down, which one of these mistakes do you think you've been through? And how much do you think it's cost you? Which one of these mistakes have you been making, and how much is it costing you? Let's put a minute on the board. Go. All right, guys, great job. Great job. What do you think happens after we do some work? I'm going to want to hear from you. So I'd love to hear what mistakes do you think you've been making up until this point? Right? Raise your Zoom hand. Let me catch some. Let's get in with a couple of you inside that. What have we been making? What mistakes have we been making? Maybe we get 3 or 4 people. We're going to go super fast because I'm way over time, but I want to make sure that we get this, right? So who do we have? Who do we have first? Let's get 3 or 4 people real quick.
Yep. First up we have is Tara L. Give it up for Tara, everybody.
Hello, Tara.
Hi, Dr. T. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? So what mistakes
Doing
have you been
really
making?
good. Well, I really resonated with the cheaper is better. My girls always tease me that I always get us skinky hotels.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that, the things you're telling me about what I'm doing is affecting my kids and the neuroplasticity and all of that. So it's very eye-opening.
Great. I love that. Right. Let's give it for Tara. Great job. What do we have next? Elizabeth Kaiser. Is it Kaiser? Kiss her.
No, it's kisser, as in pucker up and kiss her under the mistletoe.
Oh, you were the woman that had all the amazing relationships because of this. I bet.
What? No.
It was a joke. It was supposed to be a joke.
Oh yeah, I get it. Yes.
It bombed. It was a bomb. It was a bad joke. All right. What mistakes have you been making?
Oh, followed the pattern of my mother of cheaping out on everything and skimping and getting what you need, not what you want.
There you go. That's a great realization. Let's give it up for Elizabeth. Great job.
Great job, Elizabeth. Next up we have is Ashley. Give it up for Ashley, everybody.
Ashley, what do you got?
Hi, Dr. T.
Hey.
I would say exactly the same thing. Cheaper is better. And as well as the first person that had spoke, I do say that to my children a lot. Well, let's get this one instead of this one because it's less or whatever. And creating that negative mind thought for
Great.
them.
Great realization. Great realization. Great job. Great job, Ashley.
Good job, Ashley. Next up we have is Andrew. What's Andrew?
What's up, Andrew?
Hey. So I'd say for me, I've always thought that money is an effect. So I think it's not making money an important focus. So, it's more about managing it, budgeting and tracking and just doing what there is to do, like buying more self-development programs than you can do personally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Lots of education.
Lots of education. I love it. Great job. Great job.
Good
We'll go
job.
one more.
Let's head over to Carla.
Carla.
I thought I lowered my hand, but I'll go. One thing I realized is the cheaper is better. That was a huge 2x4 because I just developed that mentality, but I kind of never operated from there.
Sure.
So that was an eye opener for me.
Huge one, right? Great job, right? Let's give it up for Carla. Great job. It's true when we stop and think about it. When we stop and think about kind of the situation we're in, that we're under, like we think that cheaper is better, but it's literally stopping our brain from functioning properly. It's preventing us from growing, preventing us from living the life we want to, right? See, the thing is the solution is more simple than we think. The solution is far simpler than we think. It's not as complex as we make it. But we've got to understand it's going to take work to make that solution happen. Number one is, we said we've got to minimize our options. We live in a world today where there's so much option, so much opportunity in front of us that you could do everything. And what we do is we stop ourselves from thinking, and our brain goes into chaos mode and says, I can do anything and everything. You can. The problem is you don't know how to figure that out. We have a prehistoric brain that says, you know what? I eat or I sleep. Like, that's what it does. It's survival based. And it has to. So we have to minimize our options. Second thing is what we've got to do is we got to rewire the past financial roots. We've got to go in and do the work behind the past. We've got to clear some of that. Now, you can use whatever modality necessarily you want to. There's things that are in there, but you've got to make sure that you heal it completely inside that. And when you do that, then what happens is then you move towards, you have to grow into inspiration, not desperation. You have to grow from a state of emotional fortitude, not emotional weakness. When we function from the animal brain, like we're talking about, what we do is we stop ourselves from actually growing. We stop ourselves from actually taking the steps needed for us to live our life inside that. And what we do is we restrict growth inside that. And we restrict our abundance. Everyone says, your body is made to be abundance. We're here to be abundant. No, we're here to survive. Abundance is a choice. I'll say it again. Our brain is here to survive. Abundance is a conscious choice. We have to choose that inside that. Because if we don't minimize our options, we're going to create a lack of confusion and a lack of clarity in our nervous system and our body. We're going to create added weight gain, stress, lack of sleep, tension between relationships, high blood pressure, and diabetes can be a follow-up to that. If we don't remove our past, rewire our past, we create resentment, high blood pressure issues, create an invisible ceiling, right? Tony, this is why I was saying this to you, right? Because if there's a past resentment around the past situation, then what we're going to do is we create an invisible ceiling inside that for ourselves. And we don't see where that is, but we do. We create the past invisible ceiling inside that. And if you don't grow in don't grow in inspiration, rather in desperation, what you end up is demotivated. And you end up depressed, and physical symptoms like high blood pressure, and that become a factor. And this is kind of what I was saying to Sabina, right? Not to say that you have these ailments, but that when you get on the motivation cycle, then what happens is you have to get in the low cycle, and you feel demotivated and depressed as a cycle because of it. So you've got to look at these factors inside. This becomes the model that you function with, right? And if you want to take a picture of this, you're more than welcome to take a picture of it and keep it for yourself. But just please don't share it, okay? Please don't share it because it's my IP. But this is for your value inside that. You're more than welcome to take a quick picture of it because it will serve you. Okay? So, that being the case, what do we do? How do we get through that, right? Literally in looking at this, I help people get through this. I help people crush through this. And I work with people who are committed, decisive, and resourceful in their life. Those people who are action takers and committed, decisive, resourceful, that's who I help in what I do. I don't work with people who are stuck in victim story. Remember I said in the beginning that it's going to take work, right? It's not going to be an easy conversation. It's going to take you to go through what you need to do to be able to grow yourself, to live. You're going to have to do some things that are different inside it because nobody really wants to change. But the truth is that you only gain growth when you do change. And you don't want to work on yourself, that's not for you.
Hey, look, if you're looking for help now, then you've got to schedule and take time in your life. They say that the ones that make decisions in their life and take actions are the ones that create the greatest destiny for themselves. So if you're on this page right now, book a time for yourself to be able to get the help that you're looking for. Talk to someone on my team so that they can be able to help you create the blueprint for your life. Take action in your life today. Schedule your call. I can't wait to see the results go from your life to where it is to a life that you get to love.